So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto acts like Madara. Part 1. If you guys enjoy this, what if? And you want to see part 2. Comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends. And check out the description. And check out my playlist. So let's start the video. Chapter 1. Prologue. Middle of the Dasanji Ninkai Taisen. Third Great Ninja War. Kurigakure no Sato. At Mizukage's office. Uchiha Madara was a vicious man. He always gets what he wants one way or another. Of course that concept doesn't apply to his multiple dances with Senju Hashirama, but well, that's the only exception. So, right now, he has his men set on the perfect plan to bring peace to the world. To have his little brother back, Izuna. Tsukinomi Kakaku. For years since his last dance with his former best friend and rival, he's been planning everything step for step. Piece by piece. Just like Shogi. The last piece before he dies is preparing a young Uchiha who almost died during a mission, but Zetsu rescued him just in time. The teen will replace him for the time being and will instill fear in the world by using the name Uchiha Madara and impersonating said person. And then, at the right time, he'll be back to take everything and bring peace to the world. Just a few more years. That thought got him into a rare moment of good mood that even made him smile, and was at this moment that a Kubunai captain appeared out of nowhere kneeling in his office report. Kubunai is a special Anbu division designed to continuously gather information about the other villages, Kage and infamous missing Nin, in case of war or assassination. They are extremely skilled, though they are relatively unknown since this unit is designed to work in the shadows, so no one knows of their existence, answering only to the Mizukage. In a monotone voice, the captain replied, Mizukage-sama, mission accomplished. Kumagakure has declared war on Iwagakure and Konohagakure. This is the scroll containing vital information about their military power. That cracked for a second time today a smile, which was noticed by the person in front of him who had a shocked look but thanked the mask for covering it. Of course everyone would be shocked since no one has ever seen the Mizukage smile. Hell, no one has ever seen his eyes. A voice interrupted the captain's thoughts. Very good. I've checked your file and noticed that you have an outstanding record. I'm pleased with your results, so as a reward, I'll accept your petition to quit the Kubunai division and become a full-fledged jounin. Congratulations, you may take off your mask, Phoenix, and come back tomorrow for your mission assignment as your real name Neela Terram Plus. The captain was shocked. She didn't know what to say. Who could blame her? Not only had she seen the Mizu-Kage smiling but praise her as well and accepting an actual request to leave one of the most important rank in the village. Fuck, today was her day. No one will believe her. Not that I have many friends though. That last thought made her inwardly sigh in sadness. Nonetheless, she saluted her leader. Thank you very much, Mizukage-sama, you don't know how much that means to me. As she was talking, she took her mask, finally revealing her face. She has brilliant green eyes and ankle-length auburn hair styled into a herringbone pattern at the back, a top knot tied with a dark red band and with a short bang covering her right eye. She wore the standard attire of the Kurigakure ninja, which included a grey flak jacket, metal arm guards and gloves, ninja sandals with spikes for traveling into mountainous regions, 3 ninja pouches on their back, waist over it a black cloak, a tanto strapped on his back, and the famous phoenix mask symbolizing the leader position. Madara's breath actually hitched for a second as he took the sight of her eyes and marvelous face, before returning to the normal though, there was a slight pink dust on his cheeks as the former captain placed the mask on his desk, giving him a nice view of her beautiful curves which annoyed him since he didn't know what to think about this weird feeling. Neela Terram Plus, who was standing in front of the Mizukage watching him as he hasn't moved for a while, not even a twitch for several seconds. She decided to break him out of his thoughts. Is that everything? Broken out his stupor, he blurted, which almost made him, the Uchiha Madara, faint of embarrassment, you've beautiful hair. That was the last straw after everything she saw and heard from the Mizukage in less than 30 minutes as her face turned into a full-blown red color and everything went black. The sweat drop was his only reaction as he stood up from his seat, popping some bones during the progress, walking towards the woman. He picked her up bridal style, laying her on the couch and sitting beside her, absently running a hand through her hair, immediately stopping as she gave a content sigh. The ghost Uchiha sat there beside her just thinking, what the hell was he doing and thinking? Is this what they call it? Love? No, it must be a misunderstanding. I can't fall in love, I'm the embodiment of hate and darkness. Right. As he gave an exhausted sigh, a melodic voice froze him. Ooh, you're quite cute yourself, aren't you? Though I don't understand why you hide your face under that hat, followed by a giggle, cuddling into the warm feeling she was getting. Get off, woman. in a harsh tone, but she noticed the small affection as well. Madara stood up moving towards his desk, but for the second time froze just as a pair of arms encircled his waist. "Please, don't leave me." Those words made his heart skip a beat as he was reminded of a memory that during the years he completely forgot or disregarded. Flashback. The 24-years-old Uchiha Izuna is lying on a bed crying tears of blood, taking note of the growing hatred on Madara's heart. "Please, don't leave me, Izuna. I'm going to kill those damn Senju bastards." Darkness, he only saw darkness as hatred kept consuming him. As he was planning millions of ways to dismember every single member of the tree huggers, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Stop right now, Madara Nai. I'm giving you my eyes so that I can see through you. From now on, I'll be your light. I'm not giving up on you to the curse of hatred that is plaguing the clan for years. Surpass it. One day you'll find a girl, don't make that face and trust my words, one day you'll find a girl and maybe have a child with her. Would you like that your own son or daughter was like those other fools of our clan, full of hatred, power-hungry and weak? Wouldn't it be amazing if you could live and raise him, teach everything you know, you'll be like his idol, a role model. Wouldn't you like to teach your child how to dance, Madara?" Shock. His little brother's words shook him to the very core and made him rethink everything, every single plan he had. A small smile spread on Izuna as he watched Madara's emotions clashing, and at that moment he knew that not everything was lost, and so he let himself pass to the afterlife. Though as Madara's eye and no Mangekyo Sharingan imprints the dull and lifeless eyes of his little brother in his memory, he would forget Izuna's words for a very, very long time. Flashback end. 70 years later, Madara's eyes softened and moisture on the sides of his eyes could be seen emerging. Too much time has passed since he had felt this peaceful. He could have sworn he heard the winds whisper welcome back, Nai-san. All it took was this woman, just how. He is 98 years old now, but with his best friend cells, his body is still as good as one of 50. Maybe he still could. Best friend, huh? Hashibaka, I'm back. Finally, a tear slipped past his cheek, wetting the former Anbu arms that were still encircling Madara's weight. Nilia Taram Plus didn't know why her Mizukage was crying, but she knew one thing as she moved in front of him and looked deep in those charcoal moisturized eyes. Those eyes were from someone who lived enough and suffered for 3 lifetimes put together. He has lived through so much pain. It's almost unbearable. She also noticed how he was so much alike with someone, but she couldn't put a finger on it. Oh well, she can ask later. They spent almost 20 minutes just hugging each other. One of the Zetsus that was in the room, just in case, had activated the seals implanted around the room to silence it. Hopefully no one breaks the moment, or he knew that Madara would use Kansatai. Susanoo, even if that person was a genin. 25 minutes later. They separate from each other, both feeling quite disappointed at the lack of warmth. Sitting on the couch, Neela locks eyes with a black-haired man. "Who are you?" One of the co-founders of Konohagakure no Sato, rival to Senju Hashirama, who was later renowned as the Shinobi no Kami, the Uchiha no Mirai. "I am Uchiha Madara." Bluntly with a proud tone, then smugness and finishing with an arrogant tone, taking off his cage hat, his charcoal eyes giving form to a brilliant pair of red eyes with 3 tomatoes spinning wildly, gazing over the captivating green eyes. Hitting him over the head despite the initial shock that she was in the front of a legend, scrap that, legend of the legends, and the fact that he should be a crippled man, but he's looking like he's on his late 40s with her being 38 though she loved her figure, not that she would say it out loud. Her difficult life, living in the shadow of his father Sato Taram Plus, Anbu commander, always made her feel insecure of herself. She always has to be extremely careful because everyone knew who her father was, so they tried to use her to get to him. Unforgivable. Her normally cold attitude became even more icy despite her Yotenkeke Genkai. So she joined the Kibunai unit, which under normal circumstances only answers to the Mizukage, departing herself even more from her peers, not that they would care. "So Madara-kun, tell me about you." Everything started at the Shikumatsu no Tani, Valley of the End. Time skip, 16 years later. Uchiha Madara, 108, with Hashirama's cells and with help of Zetsu, he made his body rejuvenate looking like one of 66, and Taram plus Neela hit right off the bat. It was like they were meant to be together. They both told each other their darkest secrets, though that was mostly Madara who was sent flying into a wall, almost going through it, thanks to a fist empowered by chakra, which raised an eyebrow, since he heard a Senju using that type of style. Not bad, he mused to himself. Their history was also shared, both giving apologetic looks to each other. In the first year, they were secretly a couple though they spent many hours together, either making out, sparring or arguing. Nonetheless, the last one was quite a habit for them. She explained the origins of the Taram plus Ichizoku, which was a branch clan of the Uzumaki, which surprised him if the raised eyebrow was any indication. That was why her chakra was very dense and actually large though not at Madara's level. She told him about her Yoten and Futen Kekkei Jinkase, even though Madara already knew from her files, it was still very interesting. Nonetheless, he heard her girlfriend rant about her awesomeness. On the third month, Konoha was declared the winner of the Dasanji Ninkai Taisen. Fools, all of them. It was during the 7th month that he bluntly asked her demanded, depending on the perspective, I want a child, which in his head was the same as do you want to have a child, love? Yup, totally the same. His luck was that his girlfriend already knew what he meant, so with a jump of joy, she shouted a melodic yes before she ravaged him right in the office after activating all the seals there were. On the second year, Neela was officially pregnant, much to the joy of the couple, though it was not through sex alone, because apparently he couldn't produce sperm out of his organ, so through Zetsu they had extracted the still pure and healthy sperm that were deep in his testicles and injected in Neela's womb. Even Madara had shed a tear. In the case of a boy, he wanted to give him his little brother's name Izuna, but he quickly put that thought to the side because he knew his brother wouldn't want that and he didn't want his child to think he was just a replacement. In the third year, Madara could tell he had never felt so much happiness in his life like on that day his son, yes son, was born. His mind was already running through tour training schedules, but her lover put immediately a stop onto those thoughts, saying that their son was not to be trained for 4 years or else. Right after he grunted with his famous HN plus annoying woman, Madara was sent flying crashing face first on the wall. Again. So they agreed on the name of Naruto because they knew that their little maelstrom would shake the world. He would use Taram plus his mother clan. For now, that is. During the same year, the Uchiha went to his hideout where Zetsu, who was impersonating himself before he transplanted Hashirama's cells, came to no surprise when he saw the long white hair and wrinkles all over his face, which made him kind of annoyed. Flashback. He had entered the place during the night where most likely Uchiha Obito, the young Uchiha he rescued, was sleeping. And he was. From Zetsu's reports, the 14-year-old boy had become quite strong in fact, but with what he was going about to do would take him basically 80 or 90% of his powers. Oh well, at least he will have his physical prowess that is a lot better since when he started. The only problem was going to be the white Zetsu that was attached to him. Hopefully that Senju is currently in Konoha or else the young Uchiha is going to die. Not that he cares. The only thing that matters to him is his family. Zetsu, after I'm finished, take him back to Konoha without you being seen. I had reports saying that the village was celebrating their Hokage's newborn, so it won't be too difficult. His ever-loyal servant replied, yes Madara-sama. Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki Uzumaki Kushina had a son named Menma. As Madara stepped towards Obito, charging chakra on his left eye, slowly he opened Obito's eyelid so he was looking to the Mizukage, locking his eye in no Mangekyo Sharingan with the youngest Uchiha eye. He answered the white creature HN, couldn't care less. This will take a toll on my body, so call Black Zetsu to take me home. Me no handen. Kyoku Jakyo. As he said that, his Mangekyo Sharingan began to spin wildly for 3 consecutive minutes before stopping. He gazed over white Zetsu giving a small nod, which was everything he needed to understand the situation, before the Uchiha was supported by Black Zetsu and took their leave back home. His memories were removed. Take him home. Flashback end. During the time that he was recovering he took his precious time to think and finally decided that he would pass the mantle of Mizukage to a man called Yagura Karatachi. He was definitely skilled and he was only 19. But what made him choose Yagura specifically was because of what he had inside. Sanbi no Kaidai game. He was originally going to be his pet as both Yagura and the beast were a piece of what was Madara's favorite puzzle, but after everything that happened, he doesn't care anymore. He's just a good boy and loyal to him. After writing everything in the scroll so that when he died his successor would take place immediately. He made sure also to write off a few recommendations, such as abolishing the barbaric ritual that takes place in the academy for a few years already, so the other nations won't call Kurigakure the Chijiri no Sato or the Bloody Village. He didn't have time to stop it, nor did he care. It was only his wife that reminded him. Or he would get slammed on some random wall. And he would like that his child could grow up safely and learn everything during his studies, since he was never one for books like his wife, he still harbors the take the army head on and destroy them mentality. That always makes my blood pump, heh. Everything was done and perfectly timed. The Sandaime's Kazukiage death wasn't something that gave people either good or bad vibes, since no one knew what was under the hat. With his so-called death he can be with his wife and especially his son. He was only 7 months old and was already moving his eyes like checking his surroundings if there were any hostile intentions. Maybe I'm a little paranoid. Or maybe it's because of that idiotic white Zetsu. On the 7th year, Naruto's 4th birthday was a day that would be in their memory, not even Madara held so much pride before, and that was saying much. Unlocking Naruto's chakra. Now that was something else. They were large just as his own at his age, and dense like that of his mother. He was proud, they gave birth to a monster, his potential was huge, and the elder Uchiha would make sure to explore everything of it to make sure the little Temur Plus could take on his legacy. And his enemies, with the time he still had left in this world. Yes, the ghost knew he was dying. His body was starting to reject Hashirama's cells. Proof of that was his now visible gray hair, several wrinkles and the loss of his physical prowess. I still have around 10 years if nothing happens, that's around the academy graduation time, he will be 14 by that time. Izuna has been right all this time. He's probably rolling in his grave in laughter just because I gave him reason, but at least I managed to find my peace. And he was right, because right now Izuna was laughing his ass off in the heavens. For the rest of this and next year, Naruto got to improve his chakra control, since his reserves were huge. He was very smart for his age, they took notice of that, a fine trait he got from Neela, but he showed interest in Flashy, the cracked and arrogant smirk on Madara's face. That's my son alright. Was during the 8th year that Madara gave Naruto one of the best wishes he could ask for. Flashback. Temur Plus compound. Father and son were in the clearing of the compound nearby a sizable lake made by a Suiton. No one knew of that little spot, though Madara made sure of that by implanting Genjutsu and silent seals all over the place. Temur Plus Ichizoku had a medium-sized compound, there were not too many shinobis, many of them didn't want to go to the academy, since its bad reputation was still known and fresh, and so they opted to not walk on the dark path, and many stayed as civilians. Even though there were still some strong ninjas, mainly their head, Sato Temur Plus, Neela's father. With the help of Neela's prowess in Fuinjutsu coupled with Madara's fine ocular Genjutsu, they were able to put an undetectable henge over him. They didn't want to take any chances. Both eyeing each other with their arms folded over their chest, supporting an impassive look, the elder finally said, Naruto-kun, since you know your origins and undoubtedly you've Uchiha blood running strongly in your veins, I'm going to teach you what that is known as the rite of passage, if you want to be finally acknowledged as an Uchiha. I'm not going into details, I want you to be capable enough of solving and surpassing obstacles on your own. Since I'm not going to be here for you when the time comes. Added the last part as a thought. The little 5-year-old child remained impassive, though there was a slight raised eyebrow at the sad tone in the end, but thought nothing of it. Naruto was a fair-skinned boy with spiky black hair that had a slight auburn tint to it, his hair was almost chin length, that parted to frame the sides of his face, where his bangs almost reached his right eye. He had decided to copy his father's hairstyle, letting it grow, though it took a lot of convincing from his Tushan, much to Neela's amusing and Naruto's annoyance. He wore the standard Uchiha outfit, not that he knew, a black shirt with a high collar left slightly open and with Taram Plus Clan's crest on its back, with blue pants and bandages around his shins. Around his waist he had a white sash that held a sack containing his ninja tools. This was the outfit that Madara used during his childhood, which got a smile and a hug from Naruto. Me, Hitsuji, Saru, I, Yuma, Tora. Kaiten. Bunkakek no Jutsu. Running through 6 hand seals at medium speed so that his son could follow, puffing his chest, he brought his hand over his mouth, expelling a huge whitish-orange fireball on top of the lake, burning the water and forming a good amount of steam from the boiling water. Turning his gaze over his son, taking notice of the small excitement that went through his eyes for a second before remaining impassive again, bringing a smirk to his lips, he finally stated, as you could see, I used 6 hand seals, but I could do this and other with only a hand seal. That means I've completely mastered Kaiten affinity, and due to it being extremely strong, it allows me to produce white fire that is stronger and hotter than just the normal orange. Now, take your time and try it. The young Uchiha took his father's place near the lake, his mind racing through many analyses. He expanded his chest, so that means I need to breathe a certain amount of air. Also I need to incorporate my chakra with it and add the Kaiten affinity. That's the obvious explanation. I've already got less control over my chakra, so that won't be hard, the most difficult task is adding Kaiten. Kaiten is fire, so I have to feel and pull the hot feeling side of my chakra, since when I read some Kachan scrolls, it said that each affinity has its feeling. Let's try. Madara proudly watched his son's concentrated face, and he could already tell that he got the hang of the theory. But the practical part is always harder since he needs to distinguish and make use of his chakra perfectly inside him, or else he will blow smoke instead of fire like Izuna. That last thought brought him an amused chuckle that went unheard by Naruto, his focus was commendable at least. Naruto goes through the same hand seals as his father, slower since he didn't had much practice on it, but the perfect execution made for the speed, inhaling a tremendous amount of air and puffing his chest, he went back and forth tilting his head to the front and expelling medium-size orangish fireball over the lake. Me, Hitsuji, Saru, I, Yuma, Tarakatan. Bunkakek no Jutsu. Madara took notice of the traces of white lines in the fireball's core, meaning the strong affinity over Kaiten, which was surprising since he hadn't this mastery at his age. Clapping, he walked towards his son, a rare genuine smile crossed his lips as he watched his son heavy breathing because of the strain that he caused to his lungs. He ruffled his son's black hair, and the words that came next from his mouth made Naruto's heart skip a beat. "I'm proud of you, son." No, it wasn't the words. It was his tone. That was the first time he heard so many strong emotions from his father. Warm, proud, love. But the most important. Acknowledge. Moisture formed on the side of his eyes and tears fell over his cheeks as he lifted his head gazing over his idol and role model, not hearing the small gasp from the elder Uchiha. He hugged his father for the dear life of him, letting out a thank you through sobs, not even realizing the improvement of his vision. But Madara did. So, a person doesn't need to go through any traumas to unlock it. Love is a possibility as well. You never cease to amaze me, Naruto-kun. At that moment the heavens seemed to blow a slight breeze over them as the wind picked up Naruto's hair that was shadowing his face, revealing a pair of brilliant red eyes that seemed to be spinning wildly with a tomo on each pupil dancing over it. The tremendous power ready to be unleashed was still locked in them, but Madara could feel it. And undoubtedly the whole world felt the slight shift in the wind. The Sharingan was visible showing its glory on the young Uchiha's face as unknowingly his smile matched it. Flashback end. Was during the 12th year that they, Madara and Naruto, who was 10 years old at the time, left the village with Mizukage's agreement and Neil a reluctant acceptance through many slaps and punches that sent him eating the dirt and walls. Again and again, much to Naruto's amusement. The remaining years left on Madara will be spent side by side with his son, and he plans to up his training to unimaginable levels. The 4 years training trip was set to motion. Chapter 2:01 Uchiha Naruto. During the 4 years training trip. During the trip to an unknown destination to Naruto, he would ask and hear all about what was once the legend of Uchiha Madara. He would take note of the proud voice whenever Madara spoke about his dances. Dance. That was something that the young Uchiha always thought to be a cool interpretation of battles. He would make sure to make use of it, not that he would say out loud or he would get the freaking 4 years teased. His relationship with his father was something that he would cherish forever. He didn't have many friends because it was rare for him to go outside the compound, though there were 2 or 3 guys that were currently in the academy that he spoke to. Though he didn't give away any secrets about him or his family. If word got out that he had the Sharingan, it would get him unwelcome attention and probably many problems. Sharingan. The first time his father told him that he had unlocked the greatest Taijutsu commonly known, he had promptly fainted. With it came some arrogance that his mother made sure to cut it off instantly with a few globs of lava. Scary woman. He had a few spars with his small group of friends, though they never gave him a match since he had been trained since very young and by what was probably the strongest shinobi in history, second to Senju Hashirama. Of course he wouldn't use his precious Sharingan. Senju. He didn't know what to make out of them. He noticed how his 2 cents spoke about them, sometimes with venom, sometimes like they weren't worthy of his time. Supposedly he only really respected Hashirama. Madara respected power above all else. And he would do the same. But the most interesting thing he learned was about Uchiha Izuna. His uncle. It wasn't difficult to notice the amount of affection that his father spoke of his uncle, and when he came to know the reason for Madras to surpass the curse of hatred that plagued the Uchiha Ichizoku, he made a vow to take the same reason to his grave. He was cut out of his thoughts as Madara kept talking about the same topic he was just thinking about. Remember Naruto-kun, my life was always filled with darkness. If it wasn't for your mother I would have destroyed this world. I already explained everything to you, I know you won't make the same mistake as I did. I'm not redeemable from my sins anymore, but at least I want to make sure Izuna is proud of you when it comes the time you both get to see each other. That made him stop on his tracks as Madara walked a few more steps before he noticed that his son wasn't following him. Turning his charcoal eyes to his son, he was surprised by what he said. Du-chan, I don't care what you were thinking by that time nor what you were planning to do. I don't care if people call you a monster, a traitor or an emotionless man. I just care about the present and without any doubt you are the best father I could wish for. Even if it's rare for you to show any emotions, it makes those moments that you smile significantly more precious and I will cherish them forever. I for one think that you're a strong person that overcame many obstacles during your arduous life, and I bet my life that most people would just commit seppuku if they experienced one of those moments of your life. If you're any monster, that's probably in the battlefield and I'll be just like you. Because I love the way you are, Du-chan. His breath became heavy as he listened to his son's words. Those were probably the most touching words he had ever heard during his long life. A shadow emerged from behind Naruto, and Madara's eyes widened in shock as one of persons he always loved with his dear life materialized, both looking at him with the same expression, same red-colored eyes, though one of them had only 2. Compassion, proud and love. The same eyes burning with determination as him. Izuna. Unknowingly a tear fell from his hidden right eye as he walked towards his son, kneeling in front of him as Naruto's expression turned from confusion to content as Madara hugged him tightly with a full smile on his lips, not that Naruto could see or he would be death of embarrassment. But the message was clear to him. Thank you. Some weeks later they finally came to a stop after walking at a steady pace and taking a boat going through the large ocean since they wanted to take their time before Naruto's train began, so it came to as a surprise to Naruto when he gazes over at a large village, though the buildings were destroyed and the streets were empty, only a small, very small, part of it was decent. He was broken out of his thoughts by a sound of boots smashing against the dirt. Looking at his side he noticed his father walking to that same decent part of the village he followed. His Uchiha no Sado. Finally getting acquainted with the space, and after his father gave him a brief history about this village that was destroyed during the Deniji Ninkai Taisen, Second Ninja World War, by 3 nations including his own. It was once the famous Uzumaki Ichizoku's home. One of his origins. Yes, he knew that the Temur plus Ichizoku was once a branch clan of the Uzumakas. He would make sure to train harder to come close to the level of power of Shade Muzukage, Uzumaki Genryusai, that was said to be on the same level as his father and Senju Hashirama. At least he would match him in the Kenjutsu department since it was something he planned to explore to the maximum. Coming into a stop where it looked to be what was once their training grounds, both father and son gazed over each other with the same impassive look for what seemed to be hours. Naruto's eyebrow twitched after 2 minutes of staring and Madara let out a victorious smirk. I took the time to plan your schedule. During the last years I and your Kachan only gave you the basics except for the Kaiten manipulation exercises. But everything was done for this moment. From now on I will be working you into the ground as you are always complaining like a brat. Naruto's eyebrow twitches violently, so prepare, you better be prepared. After he received a nod, he continued, for the remainder of this year will be for the complete mastery of the Kaiten element. It will be unacceptable if you don't surpass me. Getting eyes wide from the young Uchiha. Don't worry, I believe in you. Also, we'll be upping your physical exercises and you'll be introduced to the world of weights. So, put these prayer beads on your wrists and ankles and remove your shirt. As Naruto placed those and removed his shirt, Madara placed the palm of his hand on his chest as an intricate seal spread around it, glowing slightly, then a second later stopped, leaving as if nothing was there. Kenjutsu. Shishijikin. It was instantly, as Madara finished saying those words, a huge pressure came inside of his body and with the unbearable weight his arms gave him, he fell face first on the ground, much to the amusement of the eldest Uchiha. After giving him an explanation about the weight seals, he continued with the schedule. Now, as I said before, we will be mastering your Kaiten affinity, but if you finish it before the time I expect, we will be looking forward to a second affinity. Even if you don't have any doesn't mean you can't use it. Now, take this paper and charge chakra on it. Presented with the paper, Naruto grabbed it, already knowing its functionality from his studies, and charged chakra through it. And they both gazed at the results, one with a hopeful look, Naruto, and the other impassive as always. The only sound that could be heard was the leaves rustling in the wind. And then two scream. Nani? Even the all-time impassive Madara had a shocked, disbelieving and slightly jealous look on his face. Who wouldn't? As the little piece of paper split it in 2 parts, indicating a strong affinity for Fuetin. The first part combusted with very hot flames and turned into ash, but what Naruto didn't notice and Madara did was the fact that black flames had erupted in the end for a split of a second, indicating a very strong affinity for Kaiten, which Madara already knew, but the possibility of using Enten, which was the highest level of Kaiten and all Uchiha's dreams of having. Neela-chan, we created a monster, he thought with a sigh. The second and last part turned into dust and crumbled away, indicating the Doten affinity. So, Naruto-kun has Fuetin, Doten and Kaiten, with the possibility of evolving to Enten. Amazing. And because of the potential that his Kaiten has, he will probably be able to use Neela's Hyoten Kekkei Genkai, though we don't know if he will ever unlock it. With a cough he broke Naruto out of his stupor and started to explain what had happened, what was going to happen, and in case he surpassed his expectations, Madara would give him a very special gift. And so with all sets they began the training. 4 years later. His Uchiha no Sado. 2 imposing figures gazed over each other, one with dark green eyes and the other charcoal eyes boring into the other's soul. The first one had spiky, white hair that reached to waist length with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right eye with many creases around his eyes due to his age. He wore his traditional crimson armor with numerous metal plates, forming protective guards along his chest, waist, shoulders and thighs. An orange-brown gunbai which had a long black chain running up it attached to his back. Also he was wearing a metal belt, as well as a brown leather sash to hold some of his other weapons. This was Uchiha no Uchiha Madara. He had grown old, he had several wrinkles all over his face. He was kind of annoyed because he could feel his power was not even half of what it once was. At least he created a monster who had made him extremely proud during the years and he would watch over him from heavens or hell, it didn't matter. He was a proud father. The second one was a fair-skinned young teenager with spiky black hair that had a slight auburn tint to it. He had let his hair grow to waist length with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right green eye. Just like his father. He had a good build thanks to the thousands hours of physical training, which with the way seals only increased. Standing at 5'4", relatively tall for his age. This was Uchiha Terum plus Naruto, Jigoku no Shinen, a title that Itagakure, a new village, gave to him after burning alive 30 of the 40 that had tried to kill him and his father when they were buying supplies in Nami no Kuni. The other 10 were dealt with, leaving one man barely alive so he could send a message to whoever tried to attack that country. He also wore a brown leather sash across his waist, holding his most prized sword that his summons had given to him during his 3rd year as a token for the hard work he displayed whenever the boss summon called for him to train with them. Though he still had a lot of work to do with his kenjutsu style and the fact that he still hadn't unlocked his sword's potential, much to his annoyance. He gazed over his father. He could tell that the last 4 years were intense. He got a lot stronger, but he knew it was just the beginning, he wasn't at the level as his father was at his prime, which slightly scared him. But by now he could read his father easily and there was something in his eyes that he didn't like to see. Regret. Why was he feeling regret? Maybe it was because I didn't meet his expectations. No, he had appraised me many times during the years, so what is it? The calm, slightly raspy voice broke out of his thoughts. Naruto-kun, this is your final test. If you pass you shall receive a special gift. If not, we will just go back to the village and start all over again to correct your mistakes, though it's doubtful. He received only a small nod and they both unfolded their arms, tensing their muscles. Dust from the ground started to pick up and circling around them as a lone leaf that was slowly descending right between them. Tu-chan. Getting a raised eyebrow from the eldest, not expecting him to talk, nevertheless he replied as the same lone leaf was floating already by their knees level still descending, 5 seconds to touch the ground. 2 seconds from touching the ground. Shall we dance? That brought a full-blown smirk, not of arrogance, but pride on Madara's face, as the leaf was about to rest on the field where they were standing. Give me one final good dance, son. The leaf touched the field, the ground where both Uchihas were standing cracked from the impulse, and a second later they clashed, a booming sound was heard as their fists collided, sending both backwards. Letting a small smile gracing his lips, Madara moved his hands over his chest, formed a sequence of hand seals, he inhaled a huge amount of air, adding a tremendous amount of chakra that made Naruto sweat a little. Naushi inu yumaseru itora. Kaiten. Kamasitsu. Bringing himself back and forth, he exhaled a whitish flamethrower. Naruto could feel the warmth and it was still relatively far from him, so he made his own hand seal. Benton. Hiroi Cabe. Naruto exhaled his own wide wall of black flames that gave him the deserved title in the bingo book, Jigoku no Shonen. Black flames danced around the whitish ones who couldn't overcome it. Hiroi Cabe had the power to be both offensive and defensive as it could be used with a different form instead of the wall he made. He was broken out of his thoughts as his senses alerted him from danger, tilting his head upwards a huge fireball was coming his way signifying the use of the famous Kaiten. Kikaku no. Clicking his teeth in frustration for getting distracted by he slammed both of his palms in the ground as in front of him the earth began to shake and a second later a wide wall elevated from the ground. Oten. Doryuheki. Come on Naruto-kun, you can't be on the defensive forever. Madara folded his arms over his chest as he channeled a huge amount of chakra through his red three Tomo's eyes, evolving to his famed and unique Ion, no Mangekyo Sharingan, a blue ethereal creature, started to emerge around the white-haired Uchiha as 2 seconds later a terrifying humanoid was visible. Its front face had elongated canine teeth in its lower jaw bracket and 2 tusks growing from said jaw, while the back face has similarly elongated canine teeth in its upper jaw bracket and a single horn protruding from its forehead. Susanoo. He didn't stop there as he clapped his hands, intertwining his fingers. Me. Mokuten Hijutsu. Jukai Kantan. I can't go further on my Susanoo because of my age, but the humanoid form is still reasonable. Now, what will you do? Son. A roll of sweat runs down Naruto's forehead as he watches the entire ground shake as several thick trees explode from inside out towards him at great speeds. His mind racing miles per second as the trees get closer and closer. He smirks. Madara watched as the trees got closer to his son, he was about to stop them from hitting his son when he narrowed his Sharingan eyes at the smirk from the young Uchiha. His sensor abilities detected a large buildup of chakra and when the trees were about to hit the black-haired teen, a massive explosion of black flames emerged from Naruto's entire body, scorching the trees and everything around it. A look of surprise passed through Madara's face as the flames started to take shape on a very similar form of his humanoid Susanoo, though not as tall. Enten. Akuma no Imna. Black flames danced around the ethereal humanoid, its glowing yellow eyes gazing over Madara, who came over his shock, appraising his son. "Oh. Now that's interesting." Smiling, he replied, "Yeah, it takes a lot of chakra to maintain this form for a long times, but its power is beautiful and flashy just as we love. Now, to the final step of our dance." Two arms took shape from the black humanoid. As black flames dances around it, Naruto starts to perform a several number of hand seals as the humanoid surprisingly was following and copying the same hand movements. A small ball compressed of black flames formed out of thin air in front of the humanoid's mouth. A second later, with a monstrous roar that shook the earth beneath him, they launched it on the ground, which after touching the humongous explosion of black flames that took shape of a dragon, went towards Madara with speeds that even he had difficulty to follow, as his age was now taking the toll on his body. Enten. GODYRICKZ no Funka. A true proud smile spreads across Madara's face as he analyzes this in less than a second. Similar to what his son did, he and his humanoid Susanoo form a single hand seal, putting as much chakra as he could muster, tilting their head back and forth. A massive wide-spread wall of white-bluish flames exploded from his mouth. Bringing in front of him his gunbai as well, he runs chakra through the large weapon. With a swing, a huge gust collides with the wall of fire, expanding and increasing its power even more. Paren. Daigankamaikyaku. Harigakur no Sato. Taram plus compound. You can find Taram plus Uchiha gardening some flowers outside of her house. During the last 4 years she had found this oddly satisfying as her husband and son were out on a training trip. Between gardening and doing some easy missions for the village, she of course chose the former. At least it gave her some peace and took her mind out of unnecessary and unwelcome thoughts. As she gazes through one of the windows of her house, a blood-sealed scroll rests over the dining table. Releasing an exhausted sigh, the 52-year-old woman is interrupted from her thoughts as the ground beneath her shakes slightly. Her head instantly turned towards a specific direction with a faraway look, tears already threatening to fall from her eyes. Flashback. The spiky, black-haired man is standing behind a window gazing over through it at another spiky, black-haired with an auburn tint to it, trying to boil the lake with his hands, as this was one of the steps to achieve complete mastery over the Kaiten element. The sigh came out of his lips as he turned his gaze over her beautiful wife who was sitting on the couch. Walking towards her, he started. "In a few years Naruto and I will be going on a training trip." The auburn-haired locked eyes with her husband for several seconds. She knew he was dying. They had talked about it when she confronted him after seeing multiple times running into the bathroom and staying there many minutes just coughing, and sometimes she could have sworn that she heard him cry in pain. But the question is, why does he want to go on this training trip so badly with just his son? Doesn't he love her anymore? No, that's impossible, otherwise he wouldn't even mention it. 4 years. That's a lot of time he doesn't ha. The eyes widened in shock and realization as the only possibility hit her like a huge rock. "I can see you figured it out. It needs to be done. It will be for his good. The best gift I could have ever hoped to give him." He takes out of his pouch 3 scrolls and gazes over her wife again as moisture forms on the edges of her eyes. "The red scroll is for you, with instructions on how to proceed on a certain matter that one day he will need. And a personal letter for you. The black scroll is for him, explaining everything, why I'm doing this and why he doesn't know I'm dying. The white scroll contains my belongings and knowledge, telling him to use it wisely as power comes with responsibility. Thank you for everything, love. Madara, you. Don't worry, I've made peace with my mind. I lived enough already, and my greatest regret is not to have seen things through earlier. You were under my services as my Anbu for so many years, how come I was so blind to see it?" He tried to crack a joke at the end, but deep down he knew it was the truth. At least now he can join his little brother and most probably get teased. He would like that, not that he would admit anytime soon. "Madara. I love you." She throws herself and hugs him, daring anyone to take him away from her. Tears falling from her eyes, soaking his black high-collar shirt. "I love you too." Flashback end. Salty tears running over her cheeks as puffy red eyes look over the orangish sun already settling down, an amazing view in front of her eyes as a warm feeling runs through her body. "Goodbye, Koi. Hope you and Izuna-san will be watching over our son changing this world for good. Izushiagakur no Sato." An enormous explosion of flames was the result of both clashing with each other in a battle between black flames and white-bluish flames, trying to overcome each other. No more than 10 seconds later it seemed like the white flames were going to win, but with another mighty roar the black dragon literally consumed his opponent and instantly brought itself towards the skeletal blue figure as Madara couldn't maintain the chakra for the humanoid form anymore. Another huge explosion shook the earth and everything went quiet. 10 minutes later. A pair of green eyes opened looking at the clear sky. Memories from minutes ago raced through his mind and he instantly stood up ignoring the flames all over the place, running towards a figure that was lying on the scorched grass. Du-chan. He froze. His body started to tremble. His knees gave up and he fell over the old body of his father. Du-chan. Please, don't leave me. I'll never forgive myself. Tears falling from his eyes as he screamed straining his lungs to the limit. An amused weak chuckle was heard. Wait. A chuckle. Then a cough. He opens his blood-red teary eyes and gazes over the same blood-red eyes with an exquisite form. Du-chan. Zetsu, help my father, quick. Instantly a white emerged from the ground gazing over without any emotions the bloody figure of Madara. What the hell are you doing, Standy? Nah, Naruto, that's enough. That voice broke him out of rage instantly as he turned over to his father again, kneeling beside him. What do you mean, Du-chan? I was already dying. Go home. There's a scroll explaining everything. I want you to take my eyes and keep them. Whoever tries to hurt your precious people. Give them hell. Madara finished that last statement managing an arrogant smirk crossing his lips. Naruto started to sob uncontrollably as he heard that his father had everything planned and pretended to die by his hands. Widening his eyes in shock as he now knew the whole reason for the test and the gift. Even dying all you thought was about me. Madara took another deep breath. Take my gun high with you, she's strong. You can trust her to defend you from anything. The young Uchiha managed to whisper, hi dad. I'll make sure to use everything you taught me for the good and pass down your legacy to the next generation. I'll always protect my family from anyone who dares to try anything on them. I love you, Du-chan. The elder Uchiha held a smirk on his face as he removed his eyes, letting out a grunt of pain and placing inside a jar full of a greenish liquid. His job done, Madara placed a hand on his son's cheek, giving him a small smile. I love it. You, son. His arm went limp, but before it could drop on the ground, Naruto grabbed it, squeezing it as his eyes burned and unknowingly started to spin wildly at untraceable speeds. They started to emerge together taking its shape. The power only awakened by his two ancestors. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Izuna. This was their legacy passed down to him and he would prove to them that he's worthy of that legacy. That was his vow. Another tear fell from his new eyes before everything went black. Chapter 3:02 Showdown. Enten vs Shakutin. Izushiagakur no Sato. A week later. A week has passed since the death of Uchiha Madara. It's only been a few hours since Naruto woke up with a huge headache and still exhausted both mentally and physically in some kind of hospital which put me over the edge, but then memories raced through his mind, recalling why was he there. Du-chan. He gripped the bed but relaxed a second later as his sensor abilities detected someone else in the room. Tilting his head to the side, a shadow emerged from the ground revealing it to be the annoying white Zetsu. Naruto-kun, it's time to go back to the village. Next week will be the academy graduation of your generation. If you move at reasonable speeds you'll be there in 5 days tops. Also, shouldn't you think about your mother also? She's probably afraid and worried about you. In somewhat a cheerful tone though the last statement turned out as a rare serious tone from the creature. Mother. Shit, how could I forget about her? Hi. I'll be going now. You can head back now. Take the jar with my father's eyes and his body and take it to my mother. Standing up, he went to dress his clothes that were basically the same since the last ones were all battered. Looking over a mirror, he gave a small nod to Zetsu, who started to merge with the ground as flames started to consume Naruto's body. A second later both had vanished towards the same destination. Home. Harigakur no Sato. In a hard week for an auburn-haired beauty. Not only had she mourned the death of her husband, but now her father wanted to meet his son, which was weird and worrisome. She didn't want her son to get involved with a man that, despite being her father, never gave her the proper attention nor any type of affections since his wife died by assassination. She could understand the cold attitude towards everyone but even his family Sato Terum plus. So right now she's drinking some hot tea with him as his motionless eyes bored in her soul. She returned the gaze showing that she's not a little princess anymore. In a flat tone, she asked again, so, can I ask you why now? Why do you want to meet my son? The man in front of her hummed a bit before replying. I wanted to see the type of child that a Terum plus and a legendary clan that founded another village would produce. He raised his hand as she was about to speak. Don't fret, I don't have any ill intentions towards your son. Though I'm surprised that an Uchiha would be living in our village for years without anyone finding out. Truly impressive. While inwardly she was sweating a bit, she replied in the same flat tone. It doesn't matter since my husband is dead. My son will be here soon enough for the academy graduation's day this year. Meet him there if you want. As she finished the statement, a though hit her mind, and the temperature of the room decreased several degrees as the killer intent she was unleashing was massive. Even the house shook a bit and a roll of sweat fell from Sato's forehead as an emotionless voice sent a chill through his spine. "Don't you dare to take him away from me for that Anbu of yours, or I'll kill you. Understood?" Receiving a hesitant nod, the pressure vanished, and as he was about to leave, the clan head looked over his shoulder, locking eyes with his daughter. "I would never do anything that would endanger my grandson. I don't want to make the same mistakes I've done with you. My daughter." The last part was a mere whisper, but she heard it and her eyes widened in shock as tears threatened to fall from her eyes again. As she turned her head to the spot where her father was standing, it was empty. Unknowingly she had a small smile as her thoughts immediately turned to another person. "Come home, Sachi." 4 days later. Few miles from Kurigakure no Sato. In a few uneventful days for Naruto, he had no one to talk with as both Zetsus were busy, so he kept running so he could be with the last person of his family. His precious mother. "I will give my life to protect you, Kachan." His Sharingan gave life as his body burned with determination, unknowingly spinning wildly. That was another thing, his father died by his hands so he could unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan. No, he wanted to die as a proud warrior. In a dance. The other thing was just a bonus. His father had probably left his notes with his mother, so he needed to go back fast to start studying it as he didn't want to use a power he didn't know anything about. That was one of his father's lessons. And mostly because he wants to see his mother badly and support her. He was broken out of his thoughts as a zoning sound was heard around him, and thanks to his Sharingan, he jumped in time as many shurikens hit the ground where he was standing. Doing some backflips, he gazed over the spot where the shurikens came from as 4 shadows left the trees they were hiding and reappeared in front of him. His Sharingan eyes narrowed to the girl in front of him, remembering her from the bingo book, whereas the rest were non-important even though they were older than her. Everyone had a slash over the symbol on their forehead. "Sonagakure missing nins, what are you doing here? Always thought you liked hotter temperatures." Finished as he folded his arms over his chest, inwardly cursing himself for showing his. "Oh well, it doesn't matter." The woman stepped forward as she took a black book, going through the pages for some seconds and finally stopping on the right one. She reads it out loud. Name? Unknown. Moniker? Jigoku no Shonen, devilish boy. Age? 14 to 16. Village? Kurigakure no Sato. Rank? High B. Relations? Unknown. Known elements? Kaiten and Enten. Description: fair-skinned with spiky waist-length black hair that has a slight auburn tint to it, shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right green eye. Bounty? 5 million Odo, approach with caution. Closing the book and placing it inside of her pocket, she continues, your bounty is quite high for a simple B-rank shinobi. Oh well, it doesn't matter. It's nothing personal. He raised an eyebrow at the blunt disregard of his skills. Shakutin no Pakura, I would never have thought that you would underestimate someone before the main dance. Although I'm not judging you, I thought you would not take this life since you're skilled enough to be more than a simple bounty hunter, but the fact that you were betrayed by your village gives anyone enough reasons to snap. Well, you making a big mistake. As he finished the last part, every missing nin tensed as they sensed a build-up on chakra from the boy as he formed only an handed seal, puffing his chest, tilting his head back and forth, he exhales a long stream of hot whitish fire right into the middle of the group. Pain. Karyu Enden. This will split them. Pakura is dangerous with her Kekkei Genkai. My Enten versus Shakutin now would be fun. Naruto's thirst for battles always gives him the necessary adrenaline to keep dancing. It was similar to Madara. They just love when their blood starts pumping when they find a worthy partner that can follow their steps on the dance floor. Page Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 plumes of smoke out of thin air before 3 identical replicas of him were standing there side by side. He finally addresses them. Deal with the nuisances. Dismissed. As they vanished without any trace whatsoever, he charged chakra through his legs and jumped to the side as 4 large spheres of intense heat dropped where he was standing, causing a massive explosion where even the winds that followed the explosion were burning everything. Shakutin. Hinatama no Safuku. As the smoke disappeared, 2 figures were staring at each other with different emotions, one kind of surprised and the other the all-time impassive. Thoughts racing through her mind as she tries to come with an explanation why this boy wasn't a skeleton already. Why? The heat of the wind should have dehydrated him. How? Although his face showed any emotions, inwardly he was cursing his stupidity for not remembering that Shakutin was as troublesome as his Enten, and now he had to pay with a burned arm. If not for him he would be dead, as it made him able to see the Shakutin chakra through the atmosphere. As his mind raced miles per second, black flames started to dance around his body, surrounding it entirely. PSH, I gotta be careful. My Enten no Yorway consumes a large amount of chakra to sustain it. I gotta finish this since I'm not fully recovered. I can't get close since it will hurt and she has more years of experience than me. If I could use that Shakutin as well against her. That's it. Bakura, who took notice of the flames, realized it hit her. So, that's why my Shakutin didn't dehydrate you. You used your Enten to fight fire with fire. Impressive how they are almost at the same level even when I've trained longer than you, but with my next it will be over. She finished as a palm-sized sphere formed between her hands. Gritting her teeth, she launches it to the sky as a second later it creates a fake sun that was building up tons of energy. A sunbeam is launched at tremendous speeds towards Naruto, who took the time to grab a hilt over his shoulder. He swung the object as it glows pure white clashing it against the beam. Shakutin. Sabakuhi. Her breath was heavy as that took a toll on her chakra, she expected some kind of explosion, but when she heard nothing lifted her head and then a look of shock on her beautiful face as the object her opponent had in his hands seemed to absorb the beam's power. She was broken out of her thoughts as the young Uchiha gazed over her, already positioning his weapon that was still glowing white in her direction, and in an emotionless tone that sent chills through her spine, a beam of pure chakra was sent towards the green-haired woman. Uchiha Geshi. Uam. The following explosion and a huge smoke that took the shape of a mushroom took place as the beam seemed to hit the target. As the smoke disappeared a figure or more like a skeleton of what was once Bakura was laying on the crater, as he walked towards her his danger sensors goes high alert and he sidestepped as a foot followed by a leg, body and finally a mop of green hair with two brownish bangs crashed into the ground. He narrowed his eyes at the figure before gazing over at the body lying on the crater, which seemed to be disintegrating under its hot temperatures. Bikansu no Bunshin, dehydrated clone. She managed to speak between her breaths. It was my safe plan if you had escaped the beam. I never thought you would redirect it. She narrowed her eyes as she saw him going through several hand seals. Doing the same, both expelled their forms of flames at each other. Chen. Enten. Kaidana Buresirik. With a roar that looked like it came from an animal, he breathed a huge black flamethrower as the brown-eyed finished her last hand seal, exhaling 4 huge and powerful spheres of heat that looked like fireballs that seemed to dehydrate everything it touched. Shakutin. Kajusatsu. Enten vs Shakutin. Power and durability versus hottest flames, in my opinion. Both collided with each other for several seconds before the atmosphere around them kept increasing as many rolls of sweat were visible on their foreheads. A few seconds later as neither gained the upper hand, they exploded sending a wave of heat in every direction as it burned everything in that area. Seconds turned into minutes as a figure with his naked chest was walking around the scorched area. Everything was burned and lifeless. There was no grass, only multiple scorched areas and dust, not even the trees escaped. This is a nice view. A small hot breeze washed over his long spiky black hair. His Sharingan spinning wildly as he tries to detect any single movement. His eyes widened slightly as a lone kunai was on his way, he tilted his head to the side, cursing his still exhausted body. The sound. He gazed over the kunai and his eyes widened in shock as an explosive note was attached to it and ready to explode. Everything seemed to slow down as he involuntarily pushed a huge amount of chakra into his eyes before a loud booming was heard. Close to them 2 figures could be seen, the one that was supporting a body finally said, "It's over." With all of the chakra spread around the atmosphere his sensor abilities couldn't pinpoint us, so a single kunai was probably enough. Right, Bakura-sensei. The person opened one of her brown eyes looking over the kanai's direction, followed by a loud booming and more smoke. She couldn't help but feel that it still wasn't over and inwardly she actually didn't want to kill the man that had gained her respect. She was cut out of her thoughts as the smoke disappeared, even though it was hard to see because of the hot temperatures that seemed to shimmer the atmosphere now and again. I don't think so. Maki-chan. Seconds later everyone could see a man down on his knees with one of his hands placed over his head as it looked like he was in pain if the tightly closed eyes were any indication. And in pain he was. Naruto never felt so much pain in those eyes as he got another huge headache. At least he was still alive thanks to those black skeletal bones that protected him in the last second, but damn, that took a lot out of him. He heard about that before from Madara. Oh yeah, the Susanoo. But it didn't take my father's humanoid form. Probably because of my inexperience and my body is still not recovered from the exhaustion. At least my clones took care of her team. Though he was impressed with the older woman throughout their clashes. And if that kunai was any indication she was still alive as well. As he turned his gaze over where the kunai came from he noticed 2 silhouettes in the distance. So, she got back up, she came out of nowhere since I don't remember her. Spitting out some blood he stood up with his bare chest out in the open, finally gazing over the nuisance with cold green eyes that interfered with them. Seeing nothing special as he had noticed the slight flinch, he locked eyes with the battered form of Bakura. He opened his mouth to speak. Shakutin no Bakura, you're still alive. With a flat tone, he spoke to her. Shrugging her shoulders, wincing at the burns, she replied, "It seems like Jigoku no Shonen." They both gazed over each other's eyes as if they were passing a message to one another. After several seconds both cracked a smile, earning a confused look from Maki. "I hope to see you again, Pakura." "Me too. Naruto." "Me too, Naruto. And then I can have my rematch," she said as her smile widened even more, seeing Naruto with an arrogant smirk on his face. "HN. Jana." After a cool wave with his arm, his body was consumed in whitish flames, and a second later he was gone. Maki, realizing something, screamed, "He just ignored me." Though, her partner wasn't listening as she was looking over where the Uchiha was just standing seconds ago, before looking at the sky as another warm breeze washed over them. "I'll see you again soon, Naruto." 3 days later. Kurigakure no Sato. It took him 3 days to get back home, 2 more days than what he was expecting because of the exhausting battle he had. He almost died when her mother gave him a bone-crushed hug. They both missed each other a lot, and now with their husband-father gone, they only have one another for support. Since he came later than expected, he wasn't given any time to rest because an Anbu had knocked on the door to inform that the team placements were scheduled in less than 2 hours. He was lucky because an unknown party had a voucher for him to pass, saying that he had enough skills and knowledge that he didn't need to do the written and practical tests. He would have to find and thank that person in the future. So with reluctance he separated from his mother, went to take a shower and shunshined to the academy's rooftop where he set his gaze over his future teammates. He knew he would be the face of his generation because he had been trained by the best, so right now he had to prove everyone that he could take that mantle and protect them. Even though a part of him that he inherited from his father's side was annoyed since he had to be the one to look over some brats. "Well, I hope I get a decent team or else I'll shove up the Sanbi in Yagura-sama where the sun doesn't shine." Academy's classroom. When Naruto and his peers were all inside the classroom and had taken their seats, as expected everyone was looking at him. Looks ranging from curiosity to jealousy, as everyone could feel the power that he was transmitting within him and lust. He shook his head from that last emotion as he knew who was giving him those looks and he shuddered just thinking about it. Fangirls. He gazed over the ones that relatively interested him, like the blue-haired guy with a bandaged sword on his back. Oh. If I'm correct, that's one of the famous swords used by the Shinobigatana Shichen in SHK. The Hiramekure. And to be used by one of my age, that means he's capable. He tilted his head to the side as a spark of electricity caught his attention. His mind raced as he analyzed the 2 fangs that were resting on the back of a short red-haired girl's back. That's the famous twin sword Kiba. Kachan said that the former wielder Raiga Kurisuke had an apprentice. Get, that's her. She's also a few years older than us. Interesting. Everyone ceased the talking as the doors opened, revealing what was probably the teacher of the class. Chunin went over to his desk and started to read the paper he brought with him. 10 minutes later, after the boring speech. So starting off with Team 1. Ryudo Kira. And finally, Team 9. Chijuro, Amaeri Ringo and Temer plus Naruto. Your sensei will be Mei Terum plus. And that's it. Becoming a genin is just the beginning of your journey, so you need to up your training even more. Thank you, good luck with your career and make our village proud. And so, the journey of Uchiha Terum plus Naruto has begun. What will happen when he and Mei finally meet? What will be his team reaction when he shows his power? When will the world discover the existence of another Uchiha that is outside of Konoha? What about Pakura? In the heat of her battle, she didn't even think about an Uchiha living in Kurigakure. Will she use that knowledge and update the bingo book? What would be Konoha's reaction? A 4th Ninja World War looms on the horizon. What about the Chunin exams that will take place in 6 months in Konoha no less? Chapter 4:03, Mission completed. This chapter has 2 battle scenes that I actually had fun writing. The last part was just for unlocking purposes. Enjoy. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto or Bleach. 2 months later. It has been 2 months since the team assignments. Naruto still remembers his kin entering the classroom, followed by a ball of lava on the academy's teacher, who was drooling at the side of her breast. No one noticed the slight tint of pink on Naruto's cheeks before it became normal with his impassive look. Except for Mei. But that would be for later. Team 9 had gone to a BBQ restaurant so they could learn more and create bonds with each other. They had agreed to meet at the training grounds designated for their team to take a survival test that left them a little confused at first, but then Mei waved them off before stealing a kiss on her fellow clan member's cheek and leaving the team to God knows where. Flashback. Training grounds number 9. Their figures were in front of another who was currently telling them the rules of this exercise. The first 2 to touch her would pass, whereas the latest would go back to the academy, as simple as that. The blue-dressed woman, in a serious tone, continued, "Come to me with intent to kill." Naruto's eyebrow raised slightly as he knew something was missing. There were no teams with only 2 genins. May noticed this, but thought of something completely different as she walked towards the black-haired teen, enveloping him in a breast-crushing hug as he was lost in thoughts. She purred in his ears. My, don't worry Naru-kun. You can touch me wherever you want. His eyebrow twitched. Violently. Get off me woman, you're too old for M. His face went pale as she had that oh so sweet smile plastered on her face. That's too dangerous, even for his Susanoo. What? Did you say, Naruto? Even though his face was pale as a ghost and his sensors were screaming in danger, he crossed his arms over his chest, put up his arrogant smirk, and tried to defuse the situation the best way he could think of. HN. Boom. Kajuro and Ringo sweat dropped and shook their heads at their antics as the water battlefield just turned into a lava battlefield out of nowhere. 10 minutes later. After getting over the pleasantries, the lava user said begin. The 3 genins nod their head to each other as if sending a hidden message, making the older Taram Plus smile in surprise as never in a million. Here she thought they already knew the answer right at the beginning. Though she knew these 3 were the best childs coming out of the academy, she noticed the reluctance on Ringo's face. She's 2 years older than them, she probably thinks that she can't afford babysitting them. May didn't know how right she was. Kajuro stepped forward, already going through a small chain of hand seals, puffing his cheeks, he breathed a torrent of water towards May as the young Uchiha, without any seals surprising everyone, puffed his chest, releasing a violent gust of wind from his mouth, which collided with the torrent, instantly expanding it. Ringo was nowhere to be seen. Suiton. Miserapa. Duiton. Ditapa. Seeing the mini tornado on her way, she stomped the ground with her foot as a giant thick wall of earth ascended in front of her. A proof of her strong Doton affinity. Doton. Doryuheki. The massive tremor was felt as both finally made contact. Brayton. Jibashi. May widened her eyes in shock as a stream of lightning hit her back as a victorious smirk was plastered on Ringo's face. Just a turn in shock as the body in front of her melted entirely. Yagen no Bunshin. When? The voice behind her snapped out of her thoughts. When I made the wall. Doton. Doryu Taiga. In front of the auburn-haired woman, the ground turned into a large mud river, throwing her off of balance. The oldest woman continued her onslaught, forming a simple hand seal as a giant-shaped earth dragon head materialized from the river, launching several mud balls towards the genin. Using the same hand seal and puffing her already large chest, she breathed a hot flamethrower which combined with the mud shots, igniting it. Doton. Doryuden. Kaiten. Karyudo. Widening her eyes in shock, the red-haired girl was already bracing for the impact as she couldn't support herself anywhere when a voice that which she came to relish in the future made her look upwards as what she recognized to be one of the famous shinobi katanas was coated in chakra, taking shape of a long sword. The blue-haired genin swung it as an arc of pure chakra cut through and destroyed the ignited mugshots and the dragon head altogether. Iramekare came. The mud river was cancelled as May had to jump away from the swing, impressed that his little genin had pumped so much chokes on it in such a short time. She smiled at the appreciation Ringo was showing to her savior, who was already placing some bandages on her foot that almost broke in the river. She had to put those musings aside as she had to jump away as the ground where she was standing protruded spears of earth that would have skewed her. Oten. Doryuso. She jumped in front of her kin, who was gazing over her with an impassive look. She took the chance. My, if you want to ogle my body like that you just had to ask. I can arrange you some time later on. Her response made her eyebrows twitch. HN. Though, with a strained smile as she wanted to kill him for such blatant disrespect over her body. Nonetheless, I see you have both Kaiten and Doton affinities, and since we're from the same clan, maybe we can work on unlocking your Kekkei Genkai. What do you say, Cutie? An arrogant smirk was her response as he went through a chain of hand seals that she knew all too well, and she narrowed her eyes. I am possible. Imton. Imkai no Jutsu. Naruto spits an extremely powerful acid fluid out of his mouth as May snaps out of her thoughts, going through a different sequence of hand seals, spitting a massive protective amount of lava around her. Imton. Kinheki. As both collided and cancelling each other, May gazed over the youngest in a new light and in a seductively tone, spoke as she cleaned a small portion of lava that was sticking on the side of her lips from the last. You're an interesting man. I actually might just want to melt you. Speaking for the first time, he tensed his muscles, transferring almost half of his chakra reserves on his lungs. Let's get over this dance already. The Yagen no Megami, lava goddess, raised an eyebrow at the term dance but tensed as she sensed the large buildup on his chakra. The next will be huge. He made a single hand seal. Rocking back and forth, Naruto breathed a monstrous widespread wall of whitish fire that would be forever imprinted in her mind for the rest of her life. Heitan. Nkamakyaku. She missed the small nod from Naruto as the fire was on her way, even the winds burned at the intense heat, proving his mastery over the Kaiten element. Mei started a big chain of hand seals, putting as many shakes as she could muster in the next technique. She puffed her cheeks releasing a massive wave of water, and even then she knew it wouldn't be enough, but bought the time she needed to leap away. Suiton. Kaijin Nami Shakugeki. She took a deep breath as that was one of her strongest defensive techniques, and it took tons of chakra. A large mist spread over the battlefield as they clashed, and there the beauty knew how right she was from her last odd, as the heat from her students made the mist almost impossible to inhale any oxygen without burning her lungs. She was snapped out of her thoughts as she felt 4 tips of blades grazing her perfect cream skin. A twin sword threatening to slit her neck. A long chakra-coated sword targeting her spine. And a simple sword placed where her heart would be. Even in her situation, she let a true smile graced her lips. You pass. Flashback end. After passing the test with flying colors, Team 9 spent the next 2 whole months doing idiotic missions around and outside the village, but they were limited to only taking care of the bandit camps, much to the Genin's annoyance and Mei's amusement. At least everyone made their first team. Well, in Chijuro and Ringo's case that is. During the second month, Naruto decided that his team was ready to know one of his biggest secrets. After telling and showing them his Sharingan as he knew when they started to go on harder missions he would need to use it and didn't want to bother himself explaining everything. Nonetheless to say his nose found the heaven scent of Mei's breasts while mumbling something about strong man, muscle body and godly eyes much to the amusement of the other 2 Genins as they were already acquainted to their antics and the sweat drop and jealous face of Yugura who was present at the time and already knew everything from his teacher and ancestor Sandai Mizukage. He doesn't know he was actually Madara himself. Just that he was in Uchiha and made him sworn secrecy so that the elders didn't cause any problems. Was at the end of the second month that things were finally going to start to become interesting, much to Naruto's thirst for battle relief. Present time. Mizukage's office. Iguro was behind his desk gazing over the forms of Team 9. He was already expecting this proficiency on missions, but he was still reluctant to send them on this specifically important mission. It was his dream to recreate the second generation of the famous Kiri, no Shinobigatana Shichen and SHK. They had already in their ranks the wielders of Hiramekure and Kiba. In his office's vault were resting and waiting the sword Shibuki and Kabutoari, but since Raiga Kurasuki died on a mission leaving its legacy to Amayuri Ringo, they currently have no one to train the candidates on the arts of Sorrento Kuringu, silent killing. Many of them left Kurigakure because they tried to oppose the Mizukage for continuing the final test of their academy. Later on the world got knowledge of this and gave them the name of Jujiri no Sato. Half of them died and only Raiga stayed in the village as he didn't care. And this mission was to bring Kubikura and its wielder, Mamachi Zabuza, back to the village and train his successor. He was snapped out of his thoughts as an angelic voice invaded his ears. Yagu-kun, my team is ready to be sent on B-ranked missions, as we already have the required amount of D and C rank done. Puffing his cheeks, he pouted Mei-san, giving me the deserved respect. I am the great Yonde Mizukage. She giggled at his kawaii face, whereas 2 students of her team just sweat-dropped and the other remained impassive. Fine. You will be going on a B-rank mission that can very well ascend to an A rank, but I trust you guys that you can take care of any troubles you might have, right? This actually brought a large smirk on the black-haired teen as his body started to tremble in excitement which was noticed by Yugura and Mei, who shared a look. Don't worry, I'm sure we can protect ourselves. So, what's the mission, Panda Kun she purred at the end, enjoying the annoyed face of the short man and ignoring the grumbles of disrespect, superiors and old ladies, though that last one made her lips twitch. He finally answered, your mission is to head to Nami no Kuni and bring back Mamachi Zabuza and his apprentice by any means. 2 days later. Nami no Kuni. 4 figures were hiding in the trees as in front of them a battle was going on between their target and a Konoha team. The latest was losing badly and as they were about to be decapitated another voice stopped them. Mokuton. Makuja Heki. A large strong wall of wood sprouted out of the ground, intercepting the large sword in front of a gray-haired man who sighed in relief and finally relaxed by the following voices. They took their time. Heitan Ninpo. Hibashiri. Fuiton. Tatapa. A feminine voice shouted as she breathed a large jet of flames that took form of a ring surrounding the 2 figures, one with a large sword on his back and the other with an hunter nin mask, as a strong gust that came out of a black-bearded man, combined with the flames increasing its eyes and heat. As the 3 figures jumped in front of their comrades, the gray-haired man who was regaining his breath gave them an eyed smile. You're late, Tenzo, Anko, Asuma. The now revealed Tenzo spoke. The world must be coming to an end for you to say that, Kakashi. The others nodded in agreement and a tall well-built man who had a cigar in his mouth took a step forward, glaring at the 2 figures who were surrounded by the wall of fire. Momochi Zabuza, Hunter Nin, you're surrounded. Surrender as you have no way out of this. The woman with an intricate trench coat who supported an insane grin said, maybe we can let my snakes feed them. What do you say? The Kubikram wielder smirked at that and replied in a gruff voice, HN, do you think we didn't know that the copycat over there wouldn't call for backup? On his side, the long black-haired figure seeing their shocked faces, added, I don't like killing people, but since you threatened Zabuza-sama's life, I'll make an exception for you. Then huge sadistic smirk, not that they could see because of the mask, sent shivers through their spine. Asuma, who snapped out of his shock, smirked, oh. You think you can take us for fools with your puny bluff? Don't why. Suiton. Hihachi. The voice interrupted their argument as a fairly powerful jet of water washed over the flames, causing a good amount of steam to rise up from it. As the mist started to settle down, the Konoha ninja widened their eyes in shock at who was in front of them. Finally, he spoke. Nah, Zabuza-chan, you're quite busy over here. The former Anbu grunted at the statement in annoyance as he addressed the figure. It's been a long time. Few minutes ago. In the trees. Team 9 were quite interested when they saw someone using the famous Mokuton. They noticed their gun by user teammate was trembling even more in excitement, and they knew it was time to initiate their mission. Excitement was actually an understatement. His blood was pumping at such speeds that he was afraid that he would get a heart attack anytime now. As Mei finished relaying specific orders to her students as the mission had changed a bit with the newcomers, they moved. And as she went through a chain of hand seals, the auburn-haired woman didn't notice the insane grin on the young Uchiha's face. Or she just decided to ignore it. Let's go. Present time. At the bridge. Ashigaki kiss him. I said in the last chapter that everyone was forgetting about someone. In the original anime he sided with Madara, but here since Madara didn't meet or offer him a deal, he just left Kurigakure. Kisum has always been one of my favorite characters in anime, so it was mandatory that I had to bring him. Kakashi snapped out of his shock as his mind was racing through several plans per second. This changed everything, though he was still quite confident that Asuma and Tenzo were able to defeat Kisum alone. He and Anko would take on Zabuza and his companion. Fortunately his students took the bridge builder out of the battlefield or they would just get in the way. I've replenished my chakra, I can move now. The shark-skinned man gazed over their enemies and addressed his former swordsman teammate Na. This will be quite a difficult battle, but me and Samahata have been itching for a fight for some time. This will prove to be interesting. Everyone tensed as he finished his statement, but before they could move a huge shadow loomed over them and everyone tilted their heads upwards. They didn't have time to be shocked and amazed as a massive torrent of lava washed over where they were standing. Imton. Imkai no Jutsu. As they turned their gazes to the side, a different chain of reactions crossed everyone's face. Zabuza paled. I'm screwed. Kisum chuckled, now, this just got very interesting. Konoha were in shock not because of someone using a strong and rare Kekkei Genkai, but for other reasons. And Uchiha. In Kurigakure. Black hair with an auburn tint on it, that armor. He's the Jigoku no Shanin. They broke out of their thoughts as a melodic voice spoke. My, were you planning to start playing without us? Zaza-kun. A sickly sweet smile crossed her lips as Zabuza paled even further, if that was possible, ignoring the damn pet name she used to call him. His companion was looking over the black-haired man in their group, sensing the strong presence he was emitting. A small blush spread on her cheeks, and she is thankful that her mask is still on. The same boy that she was gazing at stepped forward, his 3 Tomo Sharingan boring into a specific man's soul as he lifted his pointing towards him. You. Follow me. Now. His insane grin coupled with the amount of chakra he was emitting plus the spinning red eyes made them involuntarily take a step back. His blood was boiling. His body was hitching for a dance. Although he had a feeling that he was going to be disappointed in the end. He turned his murderous eyes to the man that took a step forward, said. The man inhaled and breathed a good amount of smoke before replying to Kid, this is not a child's game. Do you really think I would let him go anywhere by himself? Without any hesitation he grunted, HN. Fine, you can come as well. They had to do a double take, but when he saw him vanishing they followed suit. Mei, who was watching the whole scene, was about to follow her student as well when a voice interrupted her for taking action. Don't worry, I'll go and make sure he doesn't die. Mei smiled and nodded her head to the swordsman before his body turned into water and with a splash he vanished. Mizu Shunshin. Her beautiful green eyes turned cold as she turned to her imminent opponents alongside a man. They were being watched from the sidelines by the genins of both teams as they didn't want to miss this battle. And a certain raven-haired boy with an arrogant smirk on his face who had just woken up was drooling at the thought of copying. Thank God he didn't get to feel the power flowing through the other Uchiha until it was too late. Few miles from the bridge. Naruto and Kisum vs Yamato Tenzo and Asuma. He had his arms crossed over his chest, the wind blowing his waist-length hair with shoulder-length bangs, framing the sides of his face, covering most of his right eye. He was wearing a midnight blue armor with numerous metal plates, forming protective guards along his chest, waist, shoulders and thighs. Strapped to his back was his father's legacy. An orange-brown gunbai which had a long black chain running up it. And finally his sword strapped on his waist. After a few seconds the party graced their presence as one of the men appeared on his side. Said man grabbed the hilt of the massive sword strapped on his back as he brought it in front of him, smashing the ground as multiple scales came out of the bandages. So, this is the famous Amahata. This was everyone's thought as the shark-skinned man spoke. So, shall we start? His only response was a movement on his left side as he watched slightly amused the boy already holding up a hand seal. As Samahata trembled with excitement at the teen's massive chakra input, the boy puffed his cheeks and expelling several dragon-headed fireballs at a decent speed towards their opponents. He immediately took action running towards them. Kisum followed him as his interest in the boy spiked watching him taking the enemy head-on. Just the way I like. Heian. Raiken ka no jutsu. Both Konoha ninja were still slightly disturbed seeing an Uchiha outside of Konoha. When the Uchiha clan gets wind of this it will bring many problems in the future. They needed to take him out and bring him back. Alive if possible. Yamato clapped his hands as a wood wall sprouted from the ground protecting them. Mokuton. Mikuja heki. The fire collided with the wood, almost breaking it as the Anbu captain gritted his teeth for wasting more chakra than necessary to sustain the wall. Asuma seeing his opponent on his way immediately went through his hand seals, expanding his chest as he inhales a good amount of air and breathing a massive stream of hot fire towards the Uchiha. Heian. Karyu Enden. As the flamethrower was coming on their way, Naruto stopped on his tracks going through his own hand signs finishing at the same time as Kisum and both shouted in unison. Suiton. Hahanu Fuiton. Kami Arashi. Ofusuka no Jutsu. I know it's supposed to be combined with a, but Kami Arashi is a that generates a whirling vortex which basically causes the same effect as the first form of the rotation. Both techniques merged together creating a massive typhoon of water who completely destroyed the stream of fire and kept going at tremendous speeds. Yamato started to build up a large amount of chakra as a roll of sweat was visible on his forehead and as he clapped his hands several wood branches came out of the ground interfacing with each other and forming a net-like wall. Mokuton. Jukai Hiki. The Anbu gave a nod to his companion who leaped away as he pushed even more chakra where now several trees shot out of the ground towards their opponents who were now visibly shocked at what they were seeing. Mokuton Hijutsu. Jukai Kantan. Naruto, who saw his father using the same against him, could easily tell that whoever this guy is didn't come even close to the mastery over the Mokuton element that Madara showed. Makes me think what type of monster Senju Hashirama was. He was snapped out of his thoughts as Kisum started to cut every tree that came in his way with his precious Amahata. He was about to help him when his sensor ability screamed in danger and his Sharingan instantly picked up the movement on his side. With a gracious move he brought his gunbai to the side as a punch coated with wind chakra collided with a large fan. Fuiton. Senpiken. Asuma had a surprised look as he gritted his teeth. How? My fist should have at least made a dent, there's not even a single scratch on it. He was brought out of his thoughts as the gunbai was glowing white as if it had absorbed the impact. You're a fool for trying to take me head on. Now I shall return that to you. Uchiha Geshi. Converting the chakra absorbed, Naruto positioned the fan in Asuma's direction who was still in midair. A massive explosion of chakra hit the older man head on sending him backwards. He didn't have time to rest as a huge torrent of lava was coming his way. What is with this kid? Imton. Imgen Arashi. He did the only thing he could in that situation. He replaced himself with a log. Kawarimi no Jutsu. The bearded man took a deep breath coughing some blood as he looked over the other battles. Yamato was already low on chakra as he was barely standing after Kisum shoved his Samahata on his shoulder. Kakashi and Anko had several burns and cuts all over their body and their opponents looked as good as they knew. Looking over his opponent again he could barely hide his surprise as the young Uchiha seemed like didn't break a sweat which made him mad. He knew this was a lost battle. He needed to retreat and regroup with everyone. He was cut out of his thoughts as the black-haired boy spoke. I'm disappointed. You're a jounin from Konoha and you can barely hold a candle against me. You tripped in your own steps while dancing. He watched as the Kurigaku genin lifted his finger pointing at him as he continued. You're disappointing. Suddenly several earth and water spears impaled him out of nowhere and he screamed in pain as blood exploded from his wounds and the last thing he saw was Kakashi, Yamato and Anko also getting impaled before darkness claimed him. He wasn't even able to see through my Uchiha Genjutsu. He was snapped out of his musings as Kakashi, Yamato and Anko jumped to where Asuma was lying. They checked all the blood dripping from his multiple wounds. Anko was about to rush the brat for killing one of his friends when the grey-eyed stopped her. Don't Anko, he got caught in a genjutsu. A strong one it seems. Kai. Placing a hand over Asuma's shoulder and cancelling the 4-inch chakra in his body, he watched as the tall man slowly opened his eyes and took on his surroundings. Kashi. Yo. May, Zabuza and Kisame appear on Naruto's side as the shark man whistles. You certainly did a good number on him. The Uchiha just crossed his arms over his chest and grunted a HN before looking over 4 more figures making themselves known. He raised an eyebrow seeing a fan symbol displayed on a raven-haired boy. The boy in question, feeling a gaze on him, looked over who the hell thought could watch him without begging for permission. He found the culprit. And his eyes immediately turned bloody red eyes with a tomo on his right eye and 2 tomatoes on his left eye. Oh boy, he was furious. With an arrogant and murderous tone he spoke. Dope, who do you think you are for stealing my clan's precious Sharingan, huh? Kakashi was about to shut him the hell up but was cut out. Your clan? Naruto asked as his eyebrow had raised even more at the arrogance of his kin. Kakashi was about to speak but was interrupted again. Sasuke team, leave him be. Naruto looked over at the blonde-haired guy who wore an horrendous orange jumpsuit as he seemed to be the only one to have some brains. He's just another weakling wannabe ninja. I'm Namikaze Menma, the next Hokage. He pumped his fist in the air as he proclaimed that. Or maybe not. Kakashi gritting his teeth was about to try to speak again, but another fucker interrupted him. Clap clap clap. Naruto and the rest turned their gazes over the imbecile who was clapping just to look down on a short fat man, surrounded by what appeared to be bandits. The fat man finished clapping and said Mamachi Zabuza, the famous Kurigakure no Kajin, couldn't kill some brats, and now I have to do your job. Oh well, I wasn't going to pay you anyway. Zabuza was about to speak when he heard footsteps coming from his side. He tilted his head watching as the young Uchiha kept walking in the bandit's direction. You're a nuisance. It was barely a whisper, but everyone in the bridge heard it. He kept walking. Oh? What a runt like you is going to do against 300 of us? You should stop playing heroes. Naruto ignored his words as some unknown energy was flowing through him. He involuntarily brought his hand to the hilt of his blade. A pure white energy washed over him before everything went black. Mindscape. Fire. Flames. The temperature was immeasurable, but he didn't feel anything. He never felt this good actually. He took a look at his surroundings, but that was just it. Flames. Fire. It was barely a whisper, but he was sure he heard it. Han. You. He spun around but just found more flames. Who's there? He gritted his teeth as he was getting impatient and kind of annoyed. And never messed with Uchiha Naruto when annoyed. So? You. Can. Hear. Me. At last. His annoyance grew, but he answered nonetheless. Yes, I can hear you. Just barely, but I can. Who and where are you? Ryu. Ka. Raijin. Jack. Jin. Ka. Jaka. His mind was burning as it raced through many conclusions. It is telling me its name. Karyukaja. Jinka Ryu. Kajin Ryuka. Are you Raijin Jaka? A flash of white was his immediate answer as his mindscape practically turned upside down as instead of all the flames there was only white. Everything was white. I'm not going to complain about being crushed by sensei's breasts anymore, geez. Whose breasts? The gruff voice broke out of his thoughts, or more like read his thoughts, as he looked over his shoulder and was surprised to see an old man with red eyes, a very long white beard, and long eyebrows. There were many scars on his torso and head, the 2 most prominent being a pair of long perpendicular scars above his right eye. He was wearing a black kimono and white haori draped over his back. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at the question. Greetings young Naruto. I'm glad you're finally able to hear me as I've been trying for the last few years. The flashback of him on the bridge as he remembers an unknown energy flowing through him. It was his sword. Oh, maybe you're not so bad as I expected. A snort was heard, much to the old man's amusement. So, to important matters. I'm a Zanpakuto. The Zanpakuto spirit reflects on our master abilities as well as his appearance. So who's your master? The old man pointed his finger in Naruto's direction. Then why do you look like a crippled man that looks like he's about to die anytime? The old man shrugged and replied in a nonchalant tone, don't know. I didn't want you to freak out if I just showed myself looking exactly as you. Nonetheless, I'll explain to you everything about me, how to release and how to use your Zanpakuto to its full capabilities. Now, don't interrupt me. At the bridge. Everyone watched intrigued as the young Uchiha suddenly stopped on his tracks, as if looked like he was in some sort of trance. Sasuke, being Sasuke, said, look, the dope finally realized how we. He stopped what he was saying as Naruto continued on his tracks. A huge smirk plastered on his face. Beto, seeing this, actually took a step back and shouted, what are you morons, kill him. The chorus of agreement was heard as everyone tensed their muscles and brought their diverse weapons such as katanas, axes, hammers, spears and a boomerang. The genin brought his still glowing sword in front of him and everyone noticed the change in the atmosphere as it was becoming harder to breathe. Everyone was snapped out of their thoughts as a chanting was heard. Ansh miss I Kajin tenace, Rikinjaka, reduce all creation to ash, Rikinjaka. A simple swing. And then all hell broke loose. A raging blaze inferno as a massive widespread wave of fire was unleashed from the unique blazing sword. Everyone could feel the heat the wave was emitting, their skin burned and they weren't even close, nor the target of that inferno. All the bandits including Gato sweated as they knew this would be the end. They had already dropped their weapons and were about to just jump to the river, but a huge roar caught their attention, and when they turned around every single one of them paled as the wave picked up its speed and was already upon them. They did the only thing they could. They screamed. 10 minutes later. Both Konoha, Kurigakure and missing Nins had their eyes widened in shock. Asuma was actually pale because he knew what had just escaped. Team 9 and their sensei were amazed by the power their teammate and friend just unleashed. If he was a beast before, what is he now? Even Mei was turned on by this. My. Such power. Maybe I should just eat him. Disam and Samahata were drooling for different reasons. The former because he had just found a play toy to spar. And the latest was actually lipping her lips at the energy and chakra she was feeling. Yes, same as a girl. The pairing will be Naruto Samahata just joking. Zabuza was smirking and the hunter Nin was curious about this enigma that was the Uchiha. She had to talk with him to see his resolve in life. Sasuke and the blonde-haired were furious and jealous. Everyone could have sworn they heard someone shouting he stole that sword from Sasuke-kun, but they ignored it as it didn't make any sense. Even after 10 long minutes the flames were still burning, even the river couldn't put it down. The bridge was completely destroyed and the bridge builder would probably need to relocate the bridge. A nonchalant voice snapped out of their thoughts. Mission completed, I guess. Chapter 5. 04 Winds that shift the balance. Winds that shift the balance. 6 months later. It's been roughly 6 months since his mission in Nami no Kuni. The villagers residing in Kurigakure, both shinobis and civilians alike, have been ecstatic about 2 legends in their own right returning to their home. Even the daimyo from Mizu no Kuni started to give the proper help in financial matters, due mostly to the abolishment of the rude final test in the academy, but mainly because of the fact that Kurigakure no Sato is well on their way to be back to their full glory. Glory. There's no glory in climbing a mountain if all you want to do is to get to the top. It's experiencing the climb itself in all its moments of revelation, heartbreak, and fatigue that has to be the goal if anyone wants to have a taste of success. Success is to be measured not by wealth, power or fame, but by the ration between what a shinobi is and what he might be. Many became arrogant just because they had money to spend as they wished, others became power-hungry fools and died because of that greed, others lost themselves in fame. Many people don't realize the price and the responsibilities that come with glory, success and fame. It gathers a lot of unwelcome attention. One might say that you should be always watching your back, otherwise it will be all over if you let your guard down just for a split of a second. And Naruto knew this. Words had spread out all over the world about an unknown Uchiha who's been living in Kurigakure for many years and has made a name for himself, being now dubbed as the Kurigakure no Akuma. And he was only 14. Every single Kage knew what this meant. The balance of power was shifting. The inclusion of the Kurigakure no Kajin, Hoshigaki Kisums, as well as the Kurigakure no Kajin, Mamachi Zabuza in their ranks, had bestowed them a great amount of power and popularity. Small countries started to request their services, consequently giving them enough money, making them able to develop their technologies such as the armory, new weapons and battle-oriented ships. The old glory days. The king of seas. And they were returning. This was troubling for the other nations as they knew from history how ruthless they were when at full capacity. No one would dare to instigate them. So if they wanted to put a stop to this, they would need to do something about this situation before it could have any repercussions on them. They needed to prove themselves superior. Thus, everyone came to the same conclusion. Present time. Kurigakure no Sato Mizukage's office. Junin exams. A blue-haired boy repeated more to himself as if tasting the words. Hosted by Konoha. A feminine voice belonging to a dark red-haired continued. Yes. The stern voice of their Mizukage confirmed what they heard. Everyone was stealing glances at the quiet black-haired man in the room as this was big yet troubling news. They were not naive. They knew that every nation heard about the powerful boy who possessed not one but 2 very strong Kekkei Genkais who was currently living in Kurigakure and that single-handedly crushed an entire army of 300 bandits with some unknown. Not just that, but the fact that it was being hosted by Konoha, where resides the Uchiha clan. There was going to be a fuss when the time came, they just knew it. Troublesome indeed. When do we leave? Asked a beautiful auburn-haired woman, as she knew it wasn't going to do any good thinking about this matter right now. Sighing, Yugura replied, the exams are starting next week, so you have to leave in 3 days so you can arrive 1 day before it starts. I'll be there for the third part along with my bodyguards Kisame and Zabuza. Oh, and Omegakure, Kusagakure, a new village called Atagakure, Takigakure, Sunagakure and finally Kumagakure are also sending their best genin teams to participate in the exam. Iwagakure is not in the list for obvious reasons, as it seems Inoki still holds a grudge on Namikaze Minato. Be ready and good luck to you all. I'll be seeing you all in the finals. You're all dismissed except for Naruto. With a chorus of "Hi," Team 9 sent a worried glance to their teammate before leaving the office. As soon as they left, Yugura started to speak. You know what this means, right? The midnight blue armored boy folded his arms over his chest and hummed a bit before replying. The other nations are apprehended because of our significant increase of power as of lately, plus the timing of these exams are not just a mere coincidence. This could be their opportunity to show that our boost in power is still not enough to compare to them, but it could also prove their downfall, as there will be many foreigners from other small countries to watch the future generation. Thus, you're asking me to win the whole tournament. Am I right? A small smile graced the Mizukage's lips before replying. I guess I didn't need to be concerned after all. Though don't let your guard down as there are always shadows looming around waiting for their chance. A smirk was his response. 6 days later. Hanahagakure no Sato Northwest Gates. The journey was uneventful for the only team sent by Kurigakure. 2 of the genins were starting to get nervous as the gates were getting closer and closer, as for the last member of their group. His blood was starting to pump in excitement. He always loved a good dance. His thirst for battles was insatiable. He just hoped that these runts could at least follow some of his steps. If the music proved to be too fast for some of them. Oh well, I guess I'll just have to separate some heads from their shoulders. He was snapped out of his musings as his activated 3-Tomo Sharingan picked up 2 chakra signatures nearby the gate. Guards? Indeed they were. As they confirmed and showed their authorization and documents, Team 9 was instantly aware of the flares sent their way. Curiosity, rage, awe, lust, and betrayal. Naruto shook his head at the last one. Fools. As they were about to enter the hotel they were staying, the Uchiha stated that he was going to amuse himself and explore a bit of his clan's village. They protested but to no avail though Mei made sure to send a Kage Bunshin that Naruto taught and explained his usefulness to follow him. So without anything else he departed, but firstly he had to look for some place to eat. 10 minutes later, he found it. Though he never tried before, it sure as hell smelled good. Ichiraku ramen. Taking a seat on a stool in the corner, he took a quick look at the menu and hummed his thoughts at the various types of plates. Hello? Could I get beef ramen, please? A shout of Roger was his response as he took the place in, analyzing the people inside of the small restaurant, but another voice snapped out of his thoughts. You're that guy we met in Nami. He growled at the volume of the voice and was about to scold whoever said that, but someone beat him to it. Boy, where are your manners, Mr. Menma? Apologize in this instant Tebane. The Uchiha turned his gaze to the side and was about to wave it off when Green met Purple eyes. They were looking at each other for what seemed like eternity when a voice broke them of their stupor. Don't ignore me. And why are you looking at my mother like that? The gun-by wielder kept ignoring the brat as he was petrified by the goddess that easily rivals that of Mei, not that he would ever admit it out loud, and Pakura in front of him. He didn't have many girlfriends though that didn't mean he wasn't ignorant about this matter. Uzumaki Kushina also didn't know how to react. This was too confusing, she felt attracted to this man's eyes and the power he was emitting. She was the best sensor in Konoha on the same level as her ancestor, Mito. And boy, she could tell this young man had massive chakra reserves, but it was its density that surprised her. It dwarfed her own. Blasphemy. She knew she was attracted to power, just like every other serious kunoichi. Her husband was the proof. That in the fact that he saved her. Maybe she could kidnap him just for some tea. Whoa, stop right there Kushina. But God he's hot and maybe I stop. For her relief someone snapped her out of her thoughts though to her dismay, it was the same person that was invading her mind. I'm sorry. Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina. Oh? Kushina as in the Akai Chishio no Habanero? Yes. She was kind of curious about how he knew about her ex-moniker as she only got back to the shinobi forces 1 year ago and it seemed as if the stories of her prowess were forgotten with the years. My name is Uchiha Terum plus Naruto. The Terum plus, you say? Hi. I have to go now, but I would like to talk with you. Maybe after the second part of the Chunin exams. Not sure. After leaving some money on the counter, he bid her see you later, vanishing in a torrent of black flames. He had piqued her interest. She was glad that Minato was busy with all the arrangements for the exam or else she was going to hear the end of it. She was so entranced in her thoughts that she almost missed her son whining. What was that all about, Ka-chan? The winds blew her long red hair, a small smile gracing her lips before replying. Nothing. Nothing at all. One day later. Konoha's Academy. As Team 9 entered the room they were met with glares coupled with some killing intents, although all that stopped as everyone noticed the black hair, then the red three Tomo's eyes, the midnight blue armor, and finally the gun high strapped to his back. They all shut their mouths. Soon the murmuring started though Naruto and his team just didn't care and lined up to some random wall as the former analyzed the strongest ones in the room. The Uchiha folded his arms over his chest raising an eyebrow as he gazed over a blonde woman, a red-haired boy, a minted green-haired girl. He missed the furious glares from another two Uchihas, or he just didn't care. The Uchiha massacre was stopped by the Yondaime. Their chakra is similar to that of Mizukage-sama, Utakata-san and Kushina-san. Oh. So they are Jinchurikis as well though it seems like the blonde and the red-haired are weaker and judging for their hit rates, the boy possesses the Ichibi and the girl has Nibi seal inside her. The former is leaking tons of bloodlust and the latter has way more control. An emotionally wrecked brat and a perfect Jinchuriki. Interesting. The girl from Tokigaku which if I'm not mistaken has the Nanabi is too fragile and young so she probably can't stand too much of its corrosive chakra before going berserk. They weren't kidding if this is the way they want to prove themselves. He was snapped out of his thoughts as his ears picked up some voices nearby the doors. Uchiha, Taram plus Naruto. Naruto turned his gaze over a familiar mop of blonde hair who was talking to a gray-haired teenager. That's Kushina and Yondaime's son. He was curious when that boy took a random card and pushed some chakra into it. Naruto noticed the slight widened in the boy's eyes and immediately narrowed his own red eyes as he heard a particular sentence before snapping his fingers. 40 D ranks, 71 C ranks, 12 B ranks, 2 A ranks and 1 S rank. Impressive. His taijutsu, ninjutsu, kinjutsu are off ch. Snap. The card lit on fire giving the boy named Kabuto some nasty burn on his fingers. The people who were paying close attention to the information widened their eyes in surprise and some others narrowed them to the Uchiha who still had his arms folded with an impassive look but inwardly his mind was racing through many possibilities. That's too much information for a simple genin. I wouldn't mind until he said that S-ranked mission. That was the training trip with my father and it should be a village secret as only my mother and the Mizukage have the knowledge of it and the mission is not even recorded. He's pretty much a spy, but there's more to it as those cards contain several pieces of information about everyone present so that means he's working for or with someone that has a large spy network. Who? While he was busy on his train of thoughts he missed the attack of 3 Otogaku nins on Kabuto who said something disrespectful about them. But it all stopped as the proctor stomped the room and shouted about maggots and exams starting. 10 hours later. Both the writing and the second part of the exam that took place in the Shinomori, Forest of Death, were easy. It didn't even give them a challenge. A black-haired girl from a team sent by a megacure claiming to be Hanzo's daughter, Akatsuki in this fic, is made of mercenaries just like in the anime before Toby came in. They were hired by Hanzo, but in this story they stayed permanently and are now a branch division of a megacure's Anbu, instead of being betrayed by Hanzo after Danzo's offer. I'll bring the Gado, Yahiko and Konan later on, don't worry. That challenged Naruto saying it was her father's orders to test his power and see if the rumors were true or if he was just another fool using the fame to mask his flaws. Flashback. Are you ready? With an amazing synchronized sigh, Team 9 went to their respective battle stances as their opponents started to run towards them head-on. With another cinched raised eyebrows, they went through a chain of hand seals as Shijura using a single scroll with a kanji for water for support for his technique, pushing chakra on it, a torrent of water explodes from it before clapping his palms and shaping it into a spiraling vortex who explodes from the top in the form of a wave, changing the entirety battlefield. Suiton. Sushma. Their opponents just had time to jump backwards, standing on the water using chakra. They widened their eyes in shock as Ringo had slammed her palms in the water and discharged a huge amount of electricity that ran through their bodies. Raiden. Horurika. They were gritting their teeth at the ease their opponents immobilized them and now were at their mercy. A large cloud of superheated ash came out of Naruto's mouth enveloping them and a large part of the field who was enjoying the looks of horror and painful screams from the burnings the ash was causing. The last thing they would see was Naruto clicking his teeth, igniting the stagnant ash, and a massive explosion rocketed through the area before everything went black. Pain. Hisekishu. That was fun. They sweat-dropped at the red-haired comment before taking the scroll from the unconscious if not death team and vanishing a second later. Flashback end. They were the first to arrive at the tower, not that they expected anything less, and with that they went to their own rooms. At the tower arena. It didn't surprise Naruto that many of these teams he was observing had passed. He wanted to fight at least one of the present GODYRICKZ as they possessed good endurance, so it made him able to test someone without killing them. The Uchiha noticed many eyes on him coming from the Jounin platform. There he saw Mei, who winked at him, making his eyebrow twitch. Many Konoha and other villages Jounins, probably senseis of the teams that had passed. He also saw the famous Andame Hokage, Tsurutobi Hiruzen, and his teammate Shinobi no Yami, Shimura Danzo, who was looking at him like he was a piece of meat. Naruto also noticed an Uchiha with Jounin uniform, glaring furiously at him, and put two and two together. So, he's the Uchiha clan head. Better give him a warm welcome. He put on his father's smirk and whispered, "And I'm not impressed." Which only Jounins and Kages, Minato and Hiruzen, heard. Nonetheless, to say, Fugaku got beyond furious as he started leaking enough killing intent and hatred that would make even Sasuke turned on. Minato saw this and coughed so he could start explaining the next part of the exams, missing the wink Kushina sent Naruto for putting the Uchiha head in his place. Few hours later. Naruto was bored. Odd, he wanted to destroy something right now. The battles were pitiful. Especially that one with pink hair against a blonde-haired girl. They just kept babbling about their lover Sasuke-kun, what the hell was going on? There were some exceptions though, as the GODYRICKZ were actually very good, especially the blonde girl who held an aura of confidence. He loved that. The Yadame's brat was a surprise. Despite that little episode in Nami no Kuni where he had been arrogant, he was actually an humble man with skills. He had beaten that Inyazuka brat quite easily. Well, if you're apprenticed by Jiraiya no Gamasenin, you can't be weak. But it was finally his turn, and much to his annoyance it was already the last battle. Oh well, at least he had a nice rest. Everyone had a shocked look as they saw the names fixed on the machine, as they had forgotten who still had to fight. A hidden smirk displayed on Fugaku and Orochimaru, who was disguised as an Oto Jounin, the former waiting for his son to trash that traitor Uchiha, and the latter because he knew something was about to happen in this fight. Uchiha Naruto versus Uchiha Sasuke versus Uchiha Imoto. Flames engulfed his body. A second later he was in the middle of the arena, with his arms crossed and lazily looking over his opponents who had already jumped over the railing. Sasuke and Imoto had an arrogant smirk on their faces as they nodded to each other, sending a hidden message which Naruto noticed and raised his perfectly shaped black eyebrow. They are teaming up on me. This dance just got a lot more interesting. The proctor stepped forward, looking over the three Uchihas, and seeing they were ready, "Hey," said Hajime. Immediately vanishing from the spot as two medium fireballs that combined with each other creating a bigger one was sent in Naruto's direction. Kaiten. Bunkakek no Jutsu. Kaiten. Bunkakek no Jutsu. Naruto was not impressed. His own fireball dwarfed their combined one. He saw them activate their Sharingan, he almost laughed at the attempt to copy his techniques. Even the clan head was doing the same. Pity. Naruto could have just unsealed the gunbai that was sealed on his right wrist because he didn't want the Uchihas to notice the similarities with Madara's gunbai. The black-haired teen just smirked and made a lone hand seal, building up chakra and puffing his chest. Fugaku, Sasuke and Imoto noticed this and fumed for not being able to copy it, but the last two had other things to worry about, as an enormous dragon head-shaped fireball, which not just collided but destroyed the large fireball. Kaiten. Mirka no Jutsu. Both Uchihas leaped to the side, and that was what Naruto wanted as he went through a sequence of hand seals, which made Mei smile as she knew what was about to happen. She was the one who taught him this little but deadly. Everyone will find it small, but what they don't understand is the amount of chakra that it has. The only possible way is to escape. This runts can't dream to block this baby. Imton. Ukabona Neppa. Naruto breathed a torrent of lava that took the form of a small wave. Both Uchihas were quite afraid as they forgot the information they received about the traitor, nevertheless they went through the same hand seals. They were going to fight this lava with fire. On the stands. Namikaze Minato was impressed. He used the same principles of Nidame Sashauha and created for his own element. This foreign Uchiha had tons of potential. Maybe even more than him. Too bad he was born in Kurigakure. He didn't care if he was from another country, as it was not the boy's fault for being born there. Of course the Uchihas wanted nothing more than to kill the traitor, even if they didn't have any fundamental reason. The young Hokage didn't allow that. These exams were very important to the future, as there would be daimyos from all over the elemental nations, there couldn't be any problems. The problem was Danzo. The old warhawk was adamant in kidnapping him, or at least killing him and getting his eyes removed. The Namikaze had strictly prohibited him from touching the young Uchiha, or he would make sure to kill Danzo himself. After calling his so-called Hokage a fool, he left the room to prepare for the incoming invasion. But Orochimaru fighting that fool, "I'll have enough time to kill the brat and take his eyes. I failed with Shisui, but I won't fail a second time." Nevertheless, he watched as the foreign Uchiha dominated the battle calmly, as if he was already sure that he would be the winner. Kushina and the rest also had surprising looks as this was 2 against 1, and it seemed as if they were about to be crushed as mere ants. Everyone was snapped out of their thoughts by an unusual high-pitched scream. "Be careful, Sasuke-kun." Back in the arena. Payton. Msenka no Jutsu Kaiten. Correctin. 2 shouts followed by a flamethrower spewed from Sasuke's mouth and several medium fireballs from the other, which clashed with the small but extremely hot wave. It gave time for Sasuke to leap away, but Emoto was too slow and he got third-degree burns on half of his body. A high painful scream followed the explosion of lava. Sasuke, who has seen everything in slow motion with his Sharingan imprinting the process, had a murderous expression on his face, and looking at the impassive face of the boy in front of him only enraged him even more. When he heard his annoying teammate shouting, he looked over that spot, and behind her, he locked eyes with Kakashi. An evil smirk crossed his lips as he remembered something he copied 6 months ago. He went through some hand seals. The murderous look crossed a gray-haired man. Todori. The sound of chirping birds made Naruto raise an eyebrow, analyzing every single detail about this with his Sharingan. He noticed the disgusted face of Kakashi, and realization hit him upon seeing the drops of sweat on Sasuke's face. "You're using something that you didn't ask permission for, and worse than that is the fact that you haven't tried to master it. This is your 2nd or 3rd time using this. I can also see that it's not even close to being completed. You disgust me, Uchiha. And for that, you shall learn." Sasuke sneered, "Shut up, traitor, I'm going to kill you with this." The duck-shaped haired boy started to run, his Sharingan madly spinning towards the other Uchiha. Naruto clapped his hands, building an enormous amount of chakra, and as he started to move his hands apart, between the palms a basketball-sized ball with black flames danced. Everyone could feel the amount of chakra compressed inside the ball, it made even the Hokage sweat. Enten. Asuku and Kagetsuchi. They clashed with each other. A loud boom followed by a massive explosion of black flames and smoke was the result of it. The arena shook a little before a painful scream snapped everyone out of their shock. When the smoke cleared, everyone noticed the burns on Sasuke's arms and even on his chest, as the shirt was burned to crisp. To the surprise of Naruto, he was still conscious, though he noticed some weird black marks spreading all over his body. Raising an eyebrow at the sudden increase in his chakra, he analyzed this new situation as his blood was starting to pump. On the stands. A wicked grin split at Orochimaru's face, which went unnoticed by everyone. "Good Sasuke-kun, give yourself to the hatred that is plaguing your heart." Yugaku was fuming because of Sasuke's incompetence at destroying this punk. It just proved that he couldn't be compared to his older brother. Upon seeing the strange black markings, he was literally disgusted at his son for using someone's power, though he filled that for later, as at least he could accidentally kill this traitor. Anko, who knew everything about the Juinjutsu, was about to jump to stop the battle when a powerful and angelic voice stopped her. "Don't." The Jounins turned their gaze towards Team 9 Sensei, who surprisingly was smiling. Upon seeing their questioning looks, she continued. "Naruto will beat him with ease. Just watch the show and don't you dare to interfere with my students' fight." Anko and some other Jounins were about to protest when a maniacal laughing stopped them. They all turned to the arena. In the arena. "Adahahahaha. Yes. With this I'll kill you. And then I'll easily surpass my brother." Naruto kept his impassive look before unfolding his arms and tensing his muscles as he went to battle stance. He opened his mouth. "So? Let's take up a notch in our little dance, shall we?" He vanished. Sasuke had only time to widen his eyes before he bent over. A good amount of blood came out of his mouth as a powerful knee hit his stomach, followed by a foot finding his right cheek that sent him crashing on the wall. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The sound of shurikens alerted him from the incoming attack. He was about to dodge using his Sharingan, but the 10 deadly objects suddenly quadrupled. His Sharingan picked up the movement of his opponent, clapping his hands. Ton. Repshim. Wind compressed and transformed into a powerful gale that doubled the shuriken speed. Everything slowed down for Sasuke as he was feeling so much hatred for being hopeless, hatred for being weak, hatred for being unable to beat him. Black markings spread over the other half of his body and started to attach to each other. His skin turned dark gray and his hair grew and turned dark blue. His eyes also turned dark gray. Additionally, he grew webbed claw-shaped wings from his back which he could use to fly and glide, and a dark star-shaped mark appeared across the bridge of his nose. He quickly used his new wings to cover himself, but he was not prepared for what happened next. Naruto watched the transformation in fascination. He could feel his power, speed, and chakra being doubled, no, tripled. Amazing. He noticed Sasuke using his wings to protect himself. Not enough. The Uchiha moved many of his fingertips, and suddenly the 10 shurikens he threw before changed its direction, as translucent wires were now visible on his fingertips attached to the shurikens. As the lines were now encircling and immobilizing the dark-skinned man, Naruto attached the strings in his mouth before making a single hand seal as fire exploded around his body, and a second later the flames were launched using the strings as a guide. Pain. Rika no Jutsu. Another scream. But this one was shorter as he used his burned wings and shook away the flames. He smirked at the power flowing inside of him before glaring at Naruto, an insane bloodlust grin ear to ear that made Gaara Shikaku aroused. He sped towards Naruto, who noticed the significant increase in speed too late and had only time to block the punch, which sent him almost crashing into a wall just by the sheer force in that punch. He had no time to rest as a large fireball was getting closer at tremendous speeds. Pain. Hienden. Naruto smirked. That's more like it. His Sharingan started to spin wildly as if searching for something in his memories, narrowing his eyes slightly, he sped through hand seals and pumping a little of extra chakra, his cheeks bulged, and a second later he spitted a large amount of water into the ground as it started to take shape of a large wall which the fireball collided into, and a massive amount of steam covered the battlefield. Suiton. Skijin Heki. His smirk never left his lips during the entire process as he jumped into the air, and already knowing his position because of the malevolent chakra, a chain of hand seals were formed under a second as multiple large fireballs were created out of thin air. Pain. Minka. Everyone in the arena had to hold themselves as a big explosion followed by the arena shaking itself, and the sudden increased temperature in the room had them a little disoriented. As the steam started to disappear, two figures were visible in the middle of the arena. One had his arms crossed with an amused smile on his face. The other was lying on the floor, he had multiple burns all over his body which was still dark, but those were from the burns and not the Juinjutsu anymore. He was unconscious and the room was silent for almost a minute before the proctor broke out of his stupor and was declared the winner. Shmsha. Uchiha Naruto. The room went quiet for another minute as the proctor finally coughed for the 12th time in less than a minute, which was starting to annoy Naruto. He explained everything about the next and final stage, as everyone needed to take a piece of paper to see who they were up against. Namikaze Menma 10. Tsubaku no Tamari 3. Tsubaku no Gaara 1. FK 5. Nara Shikamaru 4. Tsubaku no Kankuro 2. Aburam Shino 6. Aikaniji 9. Amaeri Ringo 8. Uchiha Naruto 11. Tajiro 7. Vegito, 12. Alright, here is the map. Tsubaku no Gaara vs Kankuro. Tamari vs Shikamaru. FK vs Shino. Tajiro vs Ringo. Niji vs Menma. Naruto vs Ujito. You got 1 month to prepare yourselves, good luck and see you then. Dismissed. As everyone started to leave the room, Naruto called out to Kushina after seeing Yondaime vanishing in a yellow flash. She complied, walking towards him. Hello Kushina-san. Mama, just Kushina Tebane. She clapped her mouth, noticing the slip and cursing herself. There was a small smile on Uchiha's lips. Fine. I wanted to ask you if you could train me in Kenjutsu for this month. Kushina was a bit taken aback by the offer, never expecting such an offer. She hummed a bit at the pros and cons. She could teach a prodigy at least in ninjutsu as that was the only thing he showed so far. Though she heard the rumors about some technique he used with his sword as a medium, and if that was true, then he could probably be very adept to swords, and since at her prime, she was stronger than the Kiri no Shinobi Nanan and SHK, and he came strictly to her, meant he knew more than just to swing his blade. Her son was probably going to be trained by Iro Sennin. I accept, though I can't see why you would spend an entire month learning how to properly wield a sword. Oh my dear, but that's where you're wrong. There's someone else I was looking forward to learning from. As he said that, his eyes moved to a certain corner in the shadows and winked, and he could almost feel the curiosity coming from the person in the shadows, missing the slight blush in the red-haired beauty. Nevertheless, he turned to Kushina, who seemed to notice everything that happened, though she could really feel the emotions ranging from curiosity, confusion, interest, and excitement. Due to her sensory abilities. I guess that brat is going to teach this cutie punk. Meet me at 7 AM at Air. Well, I guess we can use the Forest of Death. Is that alright for you? Kushina almost played at being so close to spiders, snakes and you. Oh well, she already agreed with his kin to train him, and this was a good opportunity to get into shape even faster, and she really had nothing to do since there were no missions because of the impending invasion. Jiraiya had already warned her husband about some of the Itagaku's plans and its leader, Orochimaru. Minato said something about temporary alliances, but she knew how difficult it was going to be for the other villages to help Konoha. That was one of the reasons she was going to train Naruto. Maybe if she helped him and Mizukage came to know about hers and Naruto's relationship, Kurigakure would be more inclined or willing to support them. Fine. Be ready, Naruto-kun. He raised an eyebrow at the suffix and for the first time in his life, decided to tease as he spoke in a mock-hurt tone. Ara, you wound me for thinking so little of me, Kushi-chan. She flushed at the pet name and decided to leave before she said something she would come to regret. She noticed the sly grin on Naruto's face before vanishing. Jerk. Naruto put on his impassive face and turned around, narrowing his eyes towards a specific spot and spoke seemingly to no one. So, do you accept training me? There was a minute of silence and he was about to just leave when the shadow in the corner decided to move. Naruto widened his eyes as a huge fireball was coming his way from behind him. Pain. Nkakuk no jutsu. Such speed, I didn't even see him move. He immediately stomped the floor with his foot beneath him as a thick large wall of earth exploded from the ground and stopped the fireball. Oten. Dorikeki. Impressive. The whisper behind him made his eyes widen in shock. It was impossible to get behind him without him knowing. And this guy just made it look like toys play. He had no time to move as the tanto that was positioned in front of him slitted his neck. A plume of smoke covered his body. The Anbu turned around not even slightly surprised about this turn of events. The masked man spoke, nonetheless. You're fast. If it was anyone else they might have been caught off guard. Your cage bunshin was perfectly timed. You're good, very good, but you are still too slow and in a world where you just need 1 second to slit another's throat. Well, I accept training you, but I don't want to hear any complaints or else I'll stop immediately, understood? Naruto let out a grunt of acknowledgement at the simple yet effective analysis of himself before a small smile came to his lips and answered. Fine. Uchiha Naruto, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. You can call me. Meanwhile. Hanahagakure Hokage's office. Namikaze Minato was behind his desk with his chin over the interlaced fingers as he locked his cold blue eyes with his precious sensei. So, Orochimaru will be disguising himself as the late Sandaime Kazekage and there's been a lot of movement close to Tsuchi no Kuni. Are you sure about this, Jiraiya-sensei? The spiked white waist-length man answered in an equally serious tone, yes Minato. There's a high possibility that they've made a temporary alliance between themselves. Yondaime's mind was racing miles per second looking for some plausible solution, but there was only one that didn't involve Konoha's destruction. He voices his thoughts. We need to speak with Mizukage and Reikage. The latter will probably agree as we have some kind of rivalry and mutual respect. The wild card will be the Mizukage. Jiraiya hummed at the implications before speaking. I guess that's the best idea. I'll have to go now. Your son wants to beat that Haika brat pretty badly, oh well. See you later. As he watched his sensei leaving, he couldn't help but think that the balance of power was about to shift even more for one side. Back in the arena. You can call me Shisui-sensei from now on. There was a grin behind his mask, but his fellow Uchiha couldn't see. Hi Shisui-sensei. We'll meet at 6 p.m. so I can take a small break between Kushina's and your training. The Anbu just shrugged, but inwardly he was curious because he had a feeling that this boy would surprise him in the future. He put those thoughts to the side and spoke in the same monotone before vanishing without any trace. Very well, see you tomorrow. Naruto watched in fascination as he left just like that. He made a fine choice. He was about to leave when someone called behind him. When he turned his eyes widened in shock even more when he saw the Omegakure's Hit-8 strapped around her neck. Hipakura. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoy it. If you want the next part of this video, turn on that bell notification. Like, subscribe and comment down below. And also check out the others videos I have created and enjoyed it. See you guys next video.